everyone, my name is David. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how to make this amazing and beautiful personal portfolio website using React.js. The best way for you to show your potential employer that you're a React developer is to build something with React.js. And the most handy thing for you to build on with React.js is your personal portfolio website. So today I'm going to show you how you can make your beautiful personal portfolio website standing out from the rest. And when you look at the banner page, you will see that the differences between this one and the mediocre one is that you will have the navigation sitting in the middle of the page instead of the top or on the side area of the page. So when you hover on it, you will see this amazing hover effect at each button. And magically, when you press on one of the navigation buttons, you will see that navigation shrinks and moves to the top of the page, including your logo name, which is your own name, by the way. And in this page, it will be like a real resume paper or CV documents showing in front of your potential employer with your personal details and all of the projects and all the personal data you have collected so far and all your skill sets. You can list more if you want to. This is the kind of things you have the advantage of, and also your personal interest in terms of your occupation fields. So this is the about page, which gives a brief view to your potential employer of your personal data. And then when you move on to the next navigation, which is the resume, you will see this amazingly resume look web page showing in front of people. This is how you're going to present things probably in your Word documents on a genuine resume paper where you design your history and the track of your personal development, including your career and your education. At the top of this part is a brief introduction of yourself, including your address and contact details. Here's your education background, and on the right side, which is your professional experience. You can include more if you have more experience or education history, right? So this is like a real resume page, like how you write on the Word documents, but you can do the same thing in the web design. And move on to the service page, where you can list the kind of service you can provide to your clients. Either your clients are going to be an individual clients or the kind of things you can do, say for example, web design, database construction, front-end design, graphical design. You can put all of those things into your service page. Here I just use Lorium because I'm introducing this one as a portfolio template. So what you put in is up to you. In the portfolio page, you can actually put in all of your previous good portfolios, works, design works, or project works over here. So this will be a JavaScript React filter function. Whichever button you click on, it'll filter out that category for your potential viewer. And when you hover on it, you will see this amazing angle brackets showing on and off. And also I leave these links to you for you to put on your project link. It's either going to be another page on a website or any page you want to show off. And in the contact page, which is the last one, you will see this amazing contact page with this blurry background showing off the background image, but give a slightly blurry effect. And also it has again your personal details, address, your email, your social profile icon, your contact number, and then you allow the user to leave a message for you. Here I have enabled this contact form where you click on the send message. If nothing gets filled, there's a bit of a form validation applied to this one. And then when you key in something, that warning sign does appear. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to build this entire portfolio website. And not only it looks nice on the full page, but also if we turn on the mobile view, you will see it looks nice as well. So here I turn on the mobile view, and if you look at the navigation, it's slightly different. It looks like this. And also this amazing shrinking effect works as well. Once you click on the navigation button, you will see your name goes to the top, the navigation shrinks down to one row, and then down here you will have your personal details showing in one big page, which is entirely scrollable, your resume as well. So thinking about your potential employer, when they look at your resume on the public transport or they're sitting behind somewhere, they're just going to browse their mobile phone to look at your resume. This will be the same as look at your resume in a paper. So give them the same sort of feeling. This is more real. And if you look at the service, it's fully responsive. And if you look at the portfolio, it looks all nice and neat on the mobile view. These are just some random images that I found to build up this template. You can replace your genuine portfolio image on your own. And look at the contact page, and you will see this looks all nice and responsive as well. So are you excited with this project right now and going to code along with me? If you are, please subscribe my channel and let's go ahead and build it. So to quickly start off this project, you just need to open up your terminal on your desktop or your laptop. Find out the directory you want to put this project in. I'm using Mac, so I found my directory, which is this one. And then quickly we just type in the code to create a React app, which is npx create React app. So this is the prefix has been defined by React.js. Once you type that, the name you want to give your project is up to you, but in this case, I just named it profile website. So this is your own customized app name. The previous one is the prefix given by React.js. So once you type that, in that directory, it will create a new folder called your app name, which is profile-website, and then we'll build all of our project and content document in that folder. So we just hit enter. So the terminal will run the code and automatically build for you. This is going to take a while, so far I'm just going to quickly pause the video. Once this one finalized, I'll go back to it. Alright, our project has been successfully set up. And then if you look at here, it tells you how to navigate to that project. You could either key in here npm start to start off your project straight away, but instead of doing so, we are going to open up this project in our code editor, which is the Visual Studio Code I'm using for this project. So first thing we're going to say, we want to navigate to that project folder by keying cd profile website. Cd stands for change directory, and then hit enter. And now you are in that project folder, which says so project dash website, and then you just type in code. This is the prefix to open up your code editor, period. And then very soon, your profile website project will be opened up in your code editor. So now, let's have a look at the folder structure. This is what has been built by the React.js. So everything has been injected automatically. You don't have to concern too much about anything in that Node module, because this is the third-party library or dependencies to support this project. So you don't have to go through them. You know that this will be a dependency, that's all. And then the thing for you to look at is the package.json file, because this file is like a catalog. It tells you what has been included in that Node module. So the dependencies, the major one has been listed here. So if you want to add in more dependencies or more packages, once you install them, the name of that package will be showing up here as well. And then this is the thing for you to pay attention to. And you can see your file name is here, its version is here. And then the second thing for you to look at is the public folder, where in which you don't have to concern all the things. You just need to have a look at the index.html file. Open that up. As you can see, this is like the root file. Eventually, all of our JavaScript that we compiled with React.js will be injected into this part, which is the div id equals to root. This will be the root div component that wraps your entire app code. So this part is the key thing, being to show on the browser. And the remaining stuff, we could just right now delete them. They just come with the built-in package, which is unrelated to our project. So all of those comment off green text bars, you can delete them because they are useless. Once you delete those, and then this line you can delete as well. It tells you need to enable JavaScript to run this app. Of course, we need our JavaScript. So once that, your page becomes a lot nicer and clean. So here you can put in your project name. So in this case, I'm just going to type in profile website and vertical line React app. It's a simple one. So if you have any metadata that you want to put in, say, for example, you want to change the description, you want to put in the author name, you can add on your own. So that's pretty much what you can do to the index file. Close that off. The next thing you want to look at is the in the source folder, you will have your index.js file and your app.js file. Let's have a look at both. The index.js file actually done one job. It just wraps the app.js file. So the app.js file will be wrapped inside this index.js file, and this index.js file will eventually be injected into this div id equals to root component over here. So that's how your application gets rendered on the DOM. So close that off. This one we won't be able to touch it unless we're doing super complicated project. We probably want to change this a little, but so far we're building a small to medium sized project. What we want to do is to focus on the app.js file. So all your customized code will be wrapped in here and in the app folder, in the app component, and then rendered into the DOM. So let's firstly control backtick to open up your terminal for this project, and then run this for testing. So that will be npm start to start up this project. Hit enter. If it runs successfully, it should be loading on your localhost 3000 on your browser, showing off this React background. And that's not a thing we need, but it's showing off basically means that our app has running successfully. And what we're going to do is showing the warning line. Let's see what's going on here. You asked me to install a a dependency of that. That's okay, we can install that. Just open up another terminal. Do not close the previous one. That one will be left on to run the browser. So open up a new one and then say npm I for install, the one you asked to install, hit enter. It will take very quick to install that bubble dependency. Once it's done, you go back to the previous one, you can see it runs pretty normal. If you have that encounter that error, you just do what it tells you to do. The warning message is not going to be the same on different computers. Maybe you don't have that error popped up, maybe you have it. Just follow the warning signs and see how you want to fix it, and you just follow the instruction to do it. And once we have this project running properly, what we're going to do now is to do a slight change to our browser, because this one so far is running the React project built-in web page. But this is not what we want. So what we're going to do is to delete all of this built-in stuff, which is the app one, delete those. And then we're going to type in our testing message. Let's just say h1 and then put in profile website. Let's see if our code is working. Save that, and then if you go back to the browser, you will see the thing you just key in has been successfully showing off on the browser. And the next thing we want to do is to run this project. We're going to install quite a few dependencies before we even start off. So to do so, control backtick, open up the terminal again. This is useless because we are not using that logo anymore, so just delete that. Going to the second terminal, where it allows you to do installation freely, clear it off. And for something we're going to install it in this project, we're going to load at one time. So later on, when you want to use them, all of those dependencies and the packages has been pre-installed successfully. You don't have to worry about them anymore. So we're going to install Bootstrap, which is a responsive framework that will make it far more easier for you to build a responsive application. Otherwise, it will take heaps of lines in your CSS to achieve that responsive purpose, which is not necessary because you have something in the market that can done a job for you and save you time. Why don't you just use it straight away? And the second thing we want to use, as I have shown you earlier, which is this Bootstrap icon thing. So you can use npm install Bootstrap icons. And then since we're using Bootstrap, we're just going to use the Bootstrap icon altogether. These two are like some sort of a perfect combination to each other. So here we can just keep typing the thing you want to install. You don't have to install twice. Let's say that Bootstrap icons, plural. And then I have also used the other icons in this project. So not only the Bootstrap icon. So let's just install that remix icon, which is another icon that I used in this one. And also I have also used the box icon. So Bootstrap icon has a sort of a limitation that it doesn't give that graphical style and that I really want to use. So I have browsed many types of icons and I found a few good ones that can actually provide more diversity in the portfolio page. So the next one will be box icons. So once we have that done, pretty much it's all good. We just hit enter so far. If I need something more later on, we just go back to the terminal and then add a few more packages. But so far I'm good with all of these. It's gonna take a very quick time. Once it's done, you will see that these things have been all successfully installed. We just close off that second terminal because we're not installing it for a while now. And then going back to the main one, leave this on and just temporarily close the terminal. Alright, we're all good so far, and move on to the genuine coding. So the first thing is to build up a few folders, which is very typical in React development environment. So in your source folder, we're going to build a few new folders. The first one is going to be the components folder, where you use this one to store your small to medium-sized component. Components means that something you can reuse, or you want to use it later on, or you want to isolate it from other component to make it stand out on your DOM. And then the second folder we're going to build is the page folder. The page folder is used to store your web page. Say, for example, you have a new individual web page or a new individual web section. You want to put that component in the page folder. And then the third folder is the data folder. Say, for example, if you are building a static website where you do not want to change your browser information, or you want to change it not quite often, you can use this data folder to store your static data. It's not like you are going to make a post request or update your browser information every day, like the e-commerce website where the user need to update every single day. Say, for example, our profile website is like a a semi-static website where the majority of the information on the website are not going to change for a certain period of time. And if you do want to update it, it's not going to be every single day. It's probably going to be 1 month or 2 months or even longer time. So for static data, we can use this folder to store them. And the last folder I want to build is the image folder. If you do have some static image that you're not going to change on your web page, you can just put that image in your image folder. So that's the 4 folders you must have before you start to code. And then the next thing we want to do is to think about, when you look at the browser, the first thing we're going to build is our banner page. The banner page will have a background image, will have your navigation, your name, title, and then your social icon logos. How are we going to start it off? We're going to start it off everything from this app and build the separate component either in this component folder or in the page folder. Eventually, this folder's component will be imported into our app file and then render on the DOM. That's how the React.js works. So first thing first, what we're going to do here is to do some general setting for our entire application. So each application is matched with a CSS file of the same name. So if you go into the app.css, you will see those few lines of code has been given. This is the React.js building package. Provide this one when this project got built initially, but we are not going to use this for this project, so we just entirely delete them. And then instead, I'm going to put in the general setting for our website, which are, first I'm going to import the Google font. The Google font is Roboto, which is this one, a very typical one for web development. And then I'm just going to do some general settings. So if you leave your CSS in your app.css file, this CSS will be applied to the entire application. Because every component or pages are wrapped inside the app folder, so this CSS will apply to all of them. So be very careful where you want to put your CSS file, right? If you only want the CSS file to apply to a single individual component, this is probably not the best place to put it. So the general setting, we want to make a rule for entire web page, margin 0, padding 0, box sizing border box. Once you type that, go back to the browser, you will see this one, the one we just typed in, hit right at the corner, so there's no margin of padding left. And the second thing we want to do is to remove the scroll behavior. We allow the web page to be scrolled, but we just do not want to see the scroll bar. Because the scroll bar will leave a margin on your left-hand side or right-hand side, that'll make your web page slightly ugly in comparison with the one that without the scroll bar. So I'm just going to remove that. This means everywhere on your web page, the scroll bar will not be displayed. And then the third part, I'm just going to key in the root to define some theme color and second color and background color of our website. And then for our body, in terms of our body, I'm just kind of typing this one. So we'll give a body a background color, a font family image, and a font family of direct bottle, and then make the height minimum 100 screen height. This is going to be the entire vertical screen, overflow hidden. And then because we have a banner image where your personal image or your dark theme image will be shown off, the way I do so is to use a pseudo element to inject that image right in the body. So it will stay at the body all the time. Otherwise, when we switch the pages, that background image will go away. So I want that background image always to stay. How do we do that? We use a body pseudo element. So here in the image folder, I'm just going to copy and paste in the image that I have prepared. This is the background image that I used in this video course. Of course, you can always replace to yours to make it nicer, but be sure it's going to be a dark theme image, not a white one, because the dark one, the majority of the text font and text color I used in this project is the white color, and the project theme color that I chose that matches perfectly with dark. If you choose a white one, this is probably not going to look really nice. So use a dark image, that's fine. And then we're going to put in our pseudo elements for the body. That'll be pseudo before. We'll make a content empty, position fixed. This is going to be the way we import our background image in your image folder, images folder plural. Type in the image name and extension. Tell the position that will be top, center, no repeat. And then once you have that, save it. That background image is showing off perfectly, right? We don't have to give it any cover or shade because it's dark already. And then the remaining settings, we're just going to be doing some text font stuff. So we make sure that we have our anchor tag. We give that color to the primary. Make sure that one has been removed for text decorations. There's no underline beneath it, and we add a cursor point to it. And that's going to be all good. So for the H1 to H6, the title, we make sure the font size has been restricted to Roboto. And the way why I set the root color is because later on when you change your mind, it's very easy to adjust the color for your web page. And then as long as you key in the correct name, every part else will be changed automatically. You don't have to go to every single component and change your color manually, which is really, really time consuming. So here I put in both color for the primary color. This one originally should be, let's give a white for now. So if it's not looking good, we're going to change it later on. So far we have done the settings for our general web page, and it looks all okay. And going back to the app to think about what's the first component we're going to build. Remember, on the banner page, when we click on the header style changes, it changes from the middle to the top and it shrinks to one row. So the first component we're going to build is the header. So inside your component folder, create a new file, not a new folder, named header. .js, that's going to be a JavaScript file, since we are building projects specifically on the React.js. So here we just key in JSX, hit enter, and then you create that component. That's how easy you are in the React project. So once you get in here, what you want to do is to create a similar boilerplate like the app one inside the header.jsx. How do we do that? We type in RFCE, which is a shortcut tab to create that boilerplate. If you don't have this shortcut installed on your code editor, what you're going to do is go into extension, and then you install something called ES7 React Redux React Native Snippets. Once you have this one installed, you will have that shortcut working in your code editor. It's a very handy way. Otherwise, you have to manually tap in all of these, which break your source and also can incur potential typo. Once you have that, you save it. What we're going to do next, as soon as you build a component, you're going to create a CSS file for it and link them together. So the next thing in the component folder, we create a file called header.css. So conventionally, I use the lowercase for the CSS file and use the uppercase for the components file. So this is just a naming convention. Hit enter. So here in this CSS file, you could just write the CSS code like how you normally do. But the first thing, we're going to have to link these two together. So we import that CSS file. Period slash in same folder. I'm looking for the header.css. Save it. So that one has been linked in. So we build a header component, but how we're going to use this? If you look at the browser now, it's not showing anywhere. Supposedly, we have the header in the div, and if we wrap it in H1, let's just say here we want the header. Supposedly, this one should be showing on the browser, but it's not. How do we do that? Like what I said before, everything is supposed to be wrapped in this app file and then render on our DOM. So whatever you created, or wherever you created, you must import it in the app file and wrap it over here for it to show on the browser. So go back to our app file. What we're going to do here is that we delete our previous testing one, give a bracket, and here we just say header. So it's asking you, are you going to import the header from the components folder? This is called automatically importing. If that's yes, just hit tab. And then look at above, it's been automatically imported for you. And then we just close that bracket, save it. So we successfully imported the header component that we created into our app file, and hopefully this one gets successfully rendered on our DOM, because that's the words that we saved in our header, and our header has been exported here by default and imported here into our app file and rendered here on the DOM. That's how the React.js way working. Really simple. The logic behind this is very easy to understand. So we have our header successfully rendered, and the next thing is to build it. We're not just going to show the user that you have one header line. We're going to build the entire header. How do we do that? Normally the header should be stored in the header tag. So we create a header tag inside it. And I like to give it an ID name of the same name, header. And then inside it, we're going to create a container. A container is a bootstrap thing. It allows you to wrap your row and columns inside it. So we just hit tab. Just pay attention to that inside of React.js, instead of using the class, they use class name, which is the same thing as the class in your standard HTML file. And over here, we create a h1. And inside here, we give the anchor. Type in your name. Here, I just use a random name, Alex Barkley. So we have that. And if we go back to the browser, you will see Alex Barkley is there. So when you hover on it, it has some hover effects. And the next one we want to do is create a h2, which is your personal slogan or your personal model, the thing you want to describe yourself, like a brief description for your own. So here I'm just going to say I'm a passionate. We give a span because we're going to do a different styling for this occupation words. Website designer. I'm a passionate website designer from your city. So here you just type in the city you're from. Just a typo, there's no T here, so passionate. So once we've done that, we should have both sitting on the top. Going back to the browser. And then the next thing we want to build is the navigation section, where you have all of the list, like about, resume, portfolio, contact, those sort of things. So in terms of the navigation, just quickly think about what do we use to wrap that navigation? Because in HTML, there's a nav tag. Why don't we just give a try to that? So also I want to give a class name, an ID, a nav tag with ID of nav bar. Hit enter. And then I want to give a class name of the same name, nav bar. And then inside that nav bar, we're going to build our navigation list, which is going to be UL to wrap that list. And inside that UL, let's think about what you want to include. Here's the trick. You can either write your entire navigation list in your header page, or if you think the logic in the React developer environment, that normally when you can have something that is repeatable and reusable, you want to separate them out into a separate component. So here inside this list, what is going to be repeatable is the nav list item, which is the LI, right? So you can either write all your IOs here, or you can isolate it into a separate component. What I'm going to do, I'm going to write one sample here, and I will show you how to do the refactoring and separate them out into a separate component. Underneath hey, and then we create that boilerplate. So inside here, we give that anchor tag a class name. We name it name link. And then we're going to give a name. The first one is about. So far, I just type in hardcode.about. But imagine that if you have 10 items in the navigation list, you're going to hardcode 10 times, which is not the React way for developing. This thing should be dynamic and injected somewhere else. But I'm just going to do a sample. So save it. Now you have your about button over here, right? And once you've done that, now we're going to build our second navigation, which is also a list, and that is going to be our resume or portfolios. We're going to repeat ourselves many times. So the idea behind is to refactoring this part into a separate component. So in our component folder, we create a new file, which is called nav list item.jsx, nav list item, and the RFCE to create a boilerplate. We want to put our reusable nav list item, this part, into that separate component. So cut, and here we delete that one and put. So now you have it, right? And since we created a nav list item, so far, we're going to create accordingly a new file called nav list item.css, this one, and then we're going to link these two together. Same period, period slash means same folder, and then we're just going to say nav list item.css. So that one got imported over here. Later on, we want to use the CSS files we have it created already. So in the header, here, how we're going to do, we're going to import the nav list item we just created. So here we say nav list item is asking you, are you going to import that one from the same folder? Yes, tab, close the angle bracket, and then you can see that one has been successfully imported from above. And you go back to the browser, you will see that bar still there. It costs you to create a new separate component, but it allows you to reuse that component and change its name dynamically, right? So how are we going to do so? Here we're going to use some JavaScript higher order array function to do the mapping. So we're going to map our nav list data into our nav list item component. Let me show you. So in our components or in our data folder, because the nav list data is more than likely to be a static data, you're not going to change your navigation name quite often. So what we're going to do, we're going to put here a new file called nav list data.js. That's purely a JavaScript file, and it's not for the React purpose. So we'll create that file, hit enter. I'm just going to copy and paste in the data that I prepared for you already over here, and I will explain. So here are all the navigation items you will have. First, we create a JavaScript array and name it nav list data. And then in the array, we have all the list items serve as a component or an object, JavaScript objects. You give the ID property a target, which is targeted to the section it's going to move on. And also the name, the active status. Remember that it doesn't matter how many sections you have, how many pages you have, you're only going to show the user one section or one page at a time. So it's only going to be one active. Same logic here. You have many navigation links, only one going to be active, the remaining going to be false, because we're going to set the active one CSS styling slightly different from the remaining rest. And then once we have all the data ready, we just export that data file over here. You must export it for other file to import it, otherwise it won't work. Okay, so this is how we build the data. Once we build our data files, we imported that data file over here and map that nav list data into our nav list item component. So first thing we want to do is to do the data import. Right at the top, we say import. Over here, we say import nav list data. If you export it in the previous file, here it will automatically shows you do you want to import that one, because it has a name matching function built in the code editor. You're hitting tab and that file got imported here. Okay, and then the next thing you want to do is to set up this file, this data file into your local state variable. And we're going to use a React hook called useStateHook. The useStateHook allows you to manage the state of each component on your browser. Say for example, in this case, we want to manage the state of the navigation item on our browser, which one is active, which one is not active, which one has been clicked on. We have to use a useStateHook to do that. We have to import that hook first from React and then load it over here. So we say create an empty array and then put it in the hook that you want to build. This is the nav list hook name. And then we're going to write a second part, which is a function called setNavList. This is how the useStateHook works. It comes in two parts. First is the state name, which is the nav list. The second one is the function name. The function manages the states. And then the last bit is to import that useState. We have to tell React that this is going to be the useReact hook. And then inside the brackets, what you're going to put in is the initial state of that state variable, which is initially we want to load our nav list data into our state variable. So we just put in nav list data over here. So what this line do is that we want to set our nav list state initially to that nav list data. So anything going to change to that state will be handled by this nav list function. The set nav list function is managing, changing, adjusting the state of the state variable. But initially, the state variable's data or the value has been set to that nav list data. That's how it works. After you've done that, we have this data loaded into our local state variable nav list, and we're going to map that nav list into our nav list item component. Here's how I do it. So inside the UL, whenever you want to write JavaScript inside the HTMLs in the React file, you have to wrap it with curly braces. we say that nav list, which is our local state variable, dot map the JavaScript higher order array function. So for each item, fact arrow, we want to map it into a nav list item. So this one, we'll just move it into our map. Save. So not finished yet. We'll have to think about what to inject in here. So far, if you're going back to our browser, you will see many abouts. Many abouts repeated. That reason is because inside our data file, how many items we have in the data list data, in the nav list data? We have 6, right? So 6 means that we're going to map the data by 6 times. If you're going back to the header, this one maps by 6 times into that nav list item component. You will have 6 of these. Because the about is hard-coded here, it's not dynamic. That's why the about has been repeated for 6 times. But we want it to be dynamic. The way to do so is that we're going to use the component property. We'll close this off for now. Here, you have to set a new property for the component. The first one is the key, because under mapping function, each item must have a key for them to be unique. The key, we're just going to use the data file, we have an ID. This one is unique, underscore ID. So we're just going to use that. Item, for each item in that data file, dot underscore ID. That's the first one. You must tell React that before you move on. The second thing is the property you set for yourself. We want to pass on this entire nav list item into our child component, nav list item component. So here we say a property item equals to that item. These two are different. This item is this item, which is a one object inside the array. It could be the first one, it could be the second one. So each object will be each item. And that item has been assigned to a property name called item, and then passed into our nav list item component. Save it. Since we have assigned a property with a value to our child component, once we go into the child component, we can take that property in by doing the object destructuring. Here, we just object destructor that property item, which we set over here in our child component, and then we want to show our item name over here. So here we just say item.name, because inside our nav list data file, every component or every object does have a name of that navigation. So we just want to present that name. This is how you can make things dynamic, right? Using our data file, map that data file into our child component, using properties and values to link that data in to show it dynamically on the browser. And now you can see these things automatically loaded here and everything is different. Okay? Now we have our navigation all built. So the next thing we want to do is that I want to do a bit of a CSS styling to make it look a bit nicer. So in our header file, header.css file, I'm just going to copy and paste in a few lines of code. First, I'm going to put in the general setting for our header. It's going to take the entire screen vertically at the beginning. So this header is slightly different from the typical header that we have built out in our impression. The typical header is like a very narrow row sitting on the top or on the side of our web page. This one is going to take the whole screen initially, and once we trigger the activation status, the header starts to animate into a different shape. So initially we want to take the whole screen vertical, and then the rest of the things I'm going to put in here. I'm going to let inside that header auto transition easy in out half second. I'm going to give a routing for the H1, and an anchor tag underneath it, give a routing to the H2, and also give a routing to the span. Remember that we have our occupation title in the same color, and then we're going to make the image. If the header contains an image, we're going to make the padding to 0, margin to 0 as well. Save that. And going back to the browser, you can see this one moves to the middle, and that underline has been added to the text. What about the navigation? The navigation is not going to be controlled inside our header, but instead it will be controlled in our navigation list item CSS, because the CSS file only applies to the component accordingly. If you write the nav list item CSS in the header file, that will be inconsistent. Okay, so that's why we do the name matching and make sure the CSS is linked to the component directly. Let me finish the header CSS just in case someone wants to do the responsive design. So in this project, I'm also going to put in the remaining code. if you want to do a responsive design, the responsive code is here as well. We use something called @media. We reset the screen width depending on the device screen width. If it shrinks down, we probably want the paddings and arrangement of the web page changes a little. So here I'm just going to paste in and there. So if the screen size is on 992 pixels, we're going to change our headers like this. If the screen size shrinks down to 768 pixels, we're going to shrink down even more. So that's how you do responsive design. With the help of Bootstrap, our work is very, very trivial because with only a few lines of code to do the adjustment. The responsive folding and wrapping has been handled by the Bootstrap. Without that, we have to write heaps of code in Flex or Grid to achieve that responsive purpose. Okay? The header top, I'll come back to that later. Remember, when we click on the navigation other than the home one, the header should move to the top. So this part of the CSS is to control the animation for the header to move to the top. I'll come back to it when we get to that point. And now let's put in the settings for the navigation list item. So on the desktop view, what we're going to show is that we give a navigation bar a padding of 0 and a margin to top of 65 pixels. We make sure the list display flex, and then we're going to put up a control over the anchor tag. Make sure it's a flex display as well. Give a color of a nearly white. Control the font size 1.1 rem, which is the root font. The root font of the web page is about 16 pixels, 16. So 1.1 is slightly larger than the root font. And then we'll give a pseudo effect of that one, because remember, when we hover on the navigation, there's supposed to be a bar underneath, and that takes about half the width. This is what it's for. And once we've done all of this, going back to the browser, let's see have I imported it correctly. That's that one. Navigation list item. Yeah, it should be correct. I'll double check, there's a typo here. I put a D at the end. Remove that. Class name should be navbar, not navbar. So I'm going back, and you can see that one has been showing off successfully with all of these. Supposedly this thing should be loaded slightly at the center, not at the right, not at the far left. So let me see what's going on there. When you apply the Bootstrap container here, the container is actually going to limit where it's located. The container normally will take the middle size, the middle area of the page, and leave a slight margin on both sides. The reason why it didn't work is because I forgot to load those imports over here. So before we import our customized CSS, whatever you have installed as a dependency in the project must be loaded first. So I'm just gonna import all of the third-party dependency that were installed at the very beginning of the video over here, which is the Bootstrap icon, the remix icon, and the box icon. So in the package.json file, if you're going back, we have installed all of these third-party dependencies right at the beginning, these four, but we haven't got a chance to import them. So now I imported all here at the app page. You must import it at the super global the place for it to apply the entire application. Once you've done that, you're going back, as you will see that this one works all cool and fine now. So yeah, that looks all good to me. You see that margin has been added on straight away. That is because the container will wrap the things in the middle of the screen and leave an equal margin on both sides. That's what it is for. Makes things a lot easier. All right, cool. So far we're good. We have pretty much done the navigation page, the header page, but we haven't put on the animation yet. The animation contains many things. First, when you hover on it, you can see this hover effect showing on, but the active one should have the underneath green bar straight away instead of me hovering on it. We haven't turned on the activation status for the navigation link. The second thing is that if we click on any of the button other than the home one, this one should pop up to the top. That one hasn't been built yet. So the next thing I'm going to do is to put on the activation for the nav link active status. Let's do it. So inside our header component, we're gonna build a function that applies to the nav list item child component over here. So whenever the user clicks on this nav list item, that function will be triggered and handle that change of the active status. So let me write a function first, give the name. We say that const handle nav on click. That's going to be an arrow function equals to fat arrow double curly braces. So we have the function name done. And in here, what we want to do is to think about, depending on what the active status is going to change, how do we know which one the user has clicked on? If you look at the data file, going back to the data file, you'll notice that the active status is a property, actually. Only the true one gets to show the difference. The false one will not be showing that difference. And the starting difference is the cyan bar underneath that navigation link. The active one will show that green bar, but the non-active one will not show that. So how do we achieve that purpose? It's by using this ID. Because each navigation have a unique ID, whenever the user changes, the ID changes accordingly. We just need to tell React that this ID has been triggered on, and you want to turn that active to true. And the remaining one has all been set to false. That's the logic behind it, okay? So in this function, we must take in the variable called ID when we click on it. And over here, so far we're just gonna console the log.id to see if the function works. In React, when you build something complicated and you don't know how to start, just think about which parameter to use and console the log.parameter to see if that function has been working. Not a typo, that's gonna be handle nav on click. And then we're gonna apply this function over here. So inside our child component nav list item, we give a property, a new property called nav on click, and assign the function we just built to this property. That is a handle nav on click. Okay, so now we have this property ready. We can now inject that property into our child component over here. So in the object destructuring of the property, we just put in this one. I'm just going to copy that, put it over here, nav on click. So now our child component is able to access the function that we write in our parents component. The way that React works is that in the child component, we read the click events. And in the parents component, we handle that click events. All right? It's a very, very basic rules for you to remember. And then inside here, how are we going to use that click events to trigger this function? We're going to use the genuine on-click property for each component, which is the on-click one. So this one, on-click, will trigger that function. We just put in that function name there. We say nav on-click. But remember, this function must pass in the ID as a parameter, so we could know which one has been clicked on. And we can pass in that ID here. To pass in a parameter, we cannot write that function straight away. We must use a arrow function to call that one first. We must call that function like this. And then we put in the ID. Where do I access that ID? Remember, in our child component, we have also passed in another property item, which contains the ID property. If you look at the data file, each item is the object inside this data array that has that ID as a property, right? So we could just say item dot underscore ID. So now we can pass in, inject that ID as a parameter into this property function, and then this property function in our parent component is this handle nav on click function, which is this one, and hopefully when we click on it, and it should console the log our ID on the console. Let's try if it's working. So going back to the browser, so now I have the console open, so let me just try to click on the home one. It gives us 1, because the ID for the home button is 1. If you look at the data file again, the home ID is 1, right? The about is 2, the resume is 3. So going back to click on about, console.log 2, resume, 3, contact, 6. So it's working all fine now. Basically means that whenever we click on the child component of the nav list item, .id gets passed into this function and can be perfectly handled by the parents component, right? So this is how we do it. So the next step is that since the parents component has already know which one you have clicked on, we're going to have to turn on and turn off that active status of the child component so you can show the CSS with a difference. So instead of writing console.log, I'm just going to delete that. What I will do here is to do a mapping. So we say we want to go through all the list items inside our navigation array to see which one you click on, and then I'm going to turn that one's active status to true. So write a new one. We say const new nav list. We're going to create a new variable. And then we want to use the existing one, which is the nav list. That one there, dot map. We're going to map through each individual item of it. Inside, we say nav each nav fat arrow, we're going to write a function. First thing is to set all the active status of the navigation array to false, because eventually we only want to have one nav list item to be true, but you don't want to keep the previous one that you clicked to be true as well. So every time the user click it, we want to set everything to false to turn off that active status, and then we found which one you click on and put that one specifically to true in the end. So the first one will be, for each nav, we want that nav active to be set to false. And then we want to find which one you click on. To find it, we'll use an if statement. We say, if the navigation ID in my array triple equals to the one you click on, which is the parameter that you pass in here, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to set the one you click on, the active status, to true, right? We turn everything to false, and then we set the one you click on to true specifically. And then we return that nav. So now you have your new list array assigned to the new one, with the new active status changes accordingly, according to the one you click. Save it. And then once we have the new array, not finished yet, we say that our nav list data will be eventually mapped into our nav list item component. Every time your list data status change, you must use this set nav list function to manage the change of the states. So here we have to manage the change. Set nav list to the new list array you just created. This is how the use state hook works in React. You have your initial state, you have your final state. This is how you want to manage and change your state. We want to change the state to the new state with the new active status. So once we have the new array, we give up the previous one, we set it to the new one, okay? And now, once you set it, this nav list will automatically become this new nav list. This one will not be working anymore. That's the initial state, okay? So once we've done that, let's go back to the browser to see if it works. Supposedly, we should have the home button with the active status. The underlying cyan bar is not showing. The reason is because we haven't put on the CSS for the active navigation item. So going to the nav list item here, we have to do a bit of a conditional setting for our class name. How do we know that if that child component for the nav list item is active or not? Because only the active one will show that underneath bar, right? So in terms of the conditional rendering of the class name, what we're going to do, we cut this, and then we put it on. We cut the static class name. We do not need the quotation mark. We put on the curly brace. This is the way you tell React that I'm going to do conditional rendering for class name. And then you put on backtick for template literal, because I'm going to dynamically mix the string, the text, with JavaScript. And then firstly, you're going to put back your static class name, and then you're going to tell the computer, -sign with double curly braces, inside here you write JavaScript. Depending on what, you're showing that active status or not. Remember, in each item, it has an active status. Only the true one will have the special CSS effect, which is the underneath bar, right? So here, what we want to do, only the item with the active status, I want to show a class name of active, because that's going to be the active navigation component. Otherwise, I'm going to just put null. Null means that nothing, right? So once you save that, it's been conditionally rendering that class name active. Only the active one will have the class name active added into the class name list. The non-active one will just be null, nothing, okay? So the reason why this could be working is because if we're going back to our nav list item, let's see, over here. Here we use CSS to control that active class. Navbar.active with a color of white, and then navbar.active with that before, which is the pseudo element. This is the cyan bar underneath the nav link, visibility visible. Okay, only under active status that thing will show. Otherwise, it's hidden. So we control it by CSS saying hovering or active status will all turn on that cyan bar underneath the nav link. And then in the child component, you put that active class name as a conditional rendering part of the entire class name list. Okay, and then once it's active, that thing will be put it back into the class name, and that CSS will be working. This is how the logic behind our React development. So now we're going back to see that home underneath cyan bar is automatically showing to the user because this one has been set to true by default. If you're going back to the nav list data, the home one has active to true by default. And hopefully once we click on other things, that thing gets removed away, you see? Unless I'm hovering on it, otherwise it won't show. I click on the third one, the previous one goes away. How come I click on one and the previous one all goes away, the underneath bar? It's because in our header function, we set all the active status to false initially, and then we only want the one that you click on to be set to true, right? So that's why it can keep changing, keep changing, keep changing, keep changing. Awesome. Even though you reload the page, that one's still on because the home one has been set to true by default. Alright, we have successfully done the navigation active handling. And the next part, what I want to do, which is the key part of our application, is whenever you click on each of these navigation links, the section should change accordingly. And also, we want to present the user with the header animation from the whole page to only the narrow row at the top. Okay? Now, so the next part, I'm going to demonstrate you how do we do the animated section switch. The first thing we're going to do is to set up the all the sections that we're going to use because we are doing the section switch. So we must have all of those section pages set up in our pages folder for us to be able to switch around them. Let's just now close our few useless files so far. So these are temporarily closed, and this as well. And in the pages folder, think about how many sections we need. We need about, resume, services, portfolio, and contact, right? We need 5 remaining sections. And in this folder, the page, we're just going to build all of them. So let's just build the first one, which is the about one, about, JSX, enter, RFCE to create a boilerplate. And very soon, we're going to create a coding file, about.css, that one there. And then we're just going to link those two together. This one is done. And the next one we can do is the contact. But before I do so, I like to create that basic section structure for this one, even though we haven't got any content for it yet. But I do need to write a section and give the ID of the same name, about, and tab. And also I like to give a class name of the same name. So once we have that, I could say inside here I will give a h1, and that'll be the about. Just a temporary section title put in here for us to have some content in that. Otherwise, it will be an empty section with nothing to show. So we have that, and the next one I'm going to build. Let's see which one's the next one. The resume. Okay. The new file. JSX. RFCE. And just gonna create that one as well. Section, resume, tab, with a class name of the same name, and then h1 resume, and same logic. Just do a CSS file for that one as well. Without CSS, close off that one. Import. Yeah, that one's good. So we have the resume one done. And the next one will be our services. Services, JSX. That's going to be a plural. So that one there with a section. And the section title. And the CSS file. There. And then we're just going to import that. I like to have things organized and structured before we actually do the building. This will make a very clear file structures, and you won't get yourself lost somewhere. So we have that one done. And the next one we're going to have is the portfolio. JSX. What's there? And just create a section. Give the ID. Of the same name. And then I'll just give a section title. Yep. So another one is this CSS file. And then just link that in. Yep, that one's in. So far we're all good. Just close off this section that has been built. So the last one will be the contact. And then here, just going to do a section with ID of contact and a class name same. And the H1 contact, give the title. And the last but not least is the contact.css. And in that CSS file, we're just going to import it. Righto. So all sections are done now, and we are ready to switch them. And think about where these sections are going to be presented. It's going to be loaded on the app.js file, because app.js contains all the main pages or sections or elements on your DOM, right? The component folder supplies the part of the elements that's going to be reused or isolated on each of the pages. So back to our app.js file, what we can do is that we put those sections right underneath the header. But let me just try one now. To have multiple elements returned in the app, we have to wrap it with the angle brackets. So we cut this one, give a bracket, and inside here, we just type in as a closing, opening and closing angle brackets, that, and wrap all of our component inside here. Yeah, so in React, it will treat all of your things as a single one. And the beauty with this one is that it's not a div, it's just an empty thing. On your DOM, it wouldn't show anything. It's not a div, it's not a HTML elements, there's nothing. But syntax, in terms of syntax, it will treat anything inside this angle brackets as a whole. That's the beauty of it. And then what we want to import is the section component that we just built. So we import the about, and you can see the about has been imported right above. And then we close that. And then we're going to import that resume. Let's see, the automatic importing is not working. Let me see if I delete it. Yeah, sometimes it's not working, the auto import. You're just gonna type the whole tag and then delete the last letter and retype it. It should pop up straight away for you. And then once we have that, we're just gonna import the services. This one, the same issue. Delete that, and the second one, import it. And then the portfolio. Then we're just going to delete that. The second one gets to import. The last is the contact. Yeah, that one auto import is working again. So we have all our sections imported here. If we're going back to the browser, let's see if we have any problems here. Cannot solve that portfolio.css. Let's see what's wrong with that file. Have I got any typos? Portfolio. T, missing one letter, that's a typo. As soon as that in, yeah, all good. So we have our page still showing the same as before, but it's working all fine. Basically means that these has been added into it, all of these sections. So before we move on to the next step, what we want to do is that we're going back to the app.js file to see have we got any general settings for our section. Not yet. And we're showing the header at the beginning. And all of those things has been overflowed, so underneath the header, you wouldn't be able to show because the header is sitting at the right top. And what we want to do, whenever we click on the navigation button in the header, each individual section should show up accordingly, according to the navigation that we click on. And the way to do so is to create a reference. We must know that which section to go. So you must tell the React that this is the section you're supposed to move on, but we need to build a reference and lock or link that reference to that specific section. So the React will know, oh, this is the one you want me to go. So how do we do that? We use something here called the use reference hook and combining with the use state hook. So we do two things. Over here at the top, right above the app.css, we're going to import the React one from React. And then we need a couple hooks. We need the use reference hook. We also need the use state hook later on. So the use reference hook will be the same as how you handle the selecting elements in vanilla JavaScript. You know how you select element in the vanilla JavaScript by stating select element by ID or select element by query or by class name, that kind of things. You can achieve the same result by using this use reference hook. In that way, we'll know when the navigation gets clicked, that section is what I'm going to target at, is what I'm referring is where you should show. And we're going to build this reference hook inside the function of app. So what I will do, I'll copy and paste all of those reference hooks, very simple. We just give them a reference name, that's going to be our home section, which is the header, about, resume, services, and portfolio contact. You just create an empty reference for it. So far, this reference is empty. It has not been linked to any DOM elements yet. But later on, we're going to link this reference to each of these sections down below. And then each section will have a reference for you to refer to or target at. The first step is this one. The second step is that I'm going to put in my section array, which contains all of our section information. I have prepared this one early. So in this array, which is a sections array, in which I put in all of these objects inside the array, each object represents a section according to this name. So for the header section, we have a name of header, and then the reference is home reference, which is the one we just built. And that one has been set to active to true by default, because initially, when the user going to the web page, the first thing they're supposed to look at is your header section, which is the home. Header is the home, home is the header in our project. And then the remaining section must be hidden. The next one is the about, which is linked to the about ref, resume linked to the resume ref. These active had all been set to false, so on and so forth. So once we have this done, what we're going to do next is we're going to link this reference to the section down below. So here in the header, what I can do is that I create a property for the header called reference and make that one equals to the home ref. So far, the home ref is an empty ref. It doesn't link to anything. But if we put as a property value to the header, you have the chance to be linked to that header section straight away. And same logic applied. I'm just going to apply all the reference to the sections. This is going to be the about ref. So in the resume, what we can do here is the resume ref. And in the service equals to that service ref. In the reference portfolio, we're going to put in the portfolio ref, and in the context, we're going to put in the contact ref. So in this way, we have linked all the reference to the sections. But the job is not finished yet, because we just passed in that reference as a value of the property to that component. But in the component, we haven't done the setting yet. So say, for example, I'm going to the header, which is this one. Inside the header, since we pass in, close this one for now, we pass in that home ref as a reference property, we have to consume that property over here. So far here, I have no property passed in. We just do the object destructuring and consume that reference property here. So once we have that, we can link this ref to our actual header component, which is this one. So over the header here, we're just going to say ref. This ref is the actual ref property given to that DOM element. Link that genuine ref property to the one we created in the previous page, which is the parents component, the ref, the reference. I specifically make these two names different because this reference comes from here, which is the reference property, and linked to the reference hook that we built right above over here. Before we done the linking, it's an empty reference, but after we done this, the linking, that ref property equals to that ref, the home reference will be actually and fundamentally assigned to the header only. So whenever you call the home ref, instead of showing the empty reference, the DOM is going to show you this header, the entire header, this part. Okay? So you understand this, and then we can do the remaining job. Going to the about, and then we pass in that reference, and then we link that ref equals to that reference there. Okay? And then we done that. Same thing applied to the contact, object destructuring, reference. And we're just going to pass in a ref as a reference. So that one is done. There are better ways to handle this, but I don't want to overload you too much in one course, so we'll introduce one hook at a time. Later on in the more advanced JavaScript or Next.js course, I will introduce a more global way or more fancy way of handling this kind of issue, but so far we just pass in at a property one by one. And the portfolio one. And by the way, for small project like a portfolio website, this is okay to do it in this way. And if you do it in a more advanced way, that'll probably consume you more time, but for small project, it's unnecessary. And the reference, passing at a property, and the genuine ref gonna be equal to that reference. Okay? So we've done that, This one can close off. Which else we haven't done yet? Portfolio, service. Yeah, these two I haven't done yet. Portfolio, we've already done it. Yeah. Service. We pass in that reference and we link it. If you don't do this, it will never be linked. This ref, this is the genuine property ref equals to the ref you created, actually link the reference hook to the actual DOM elements section. Yeah, so that one is in. And resume, I haven't done a resume yet. So this one, reference, ref equals to reference, second one, yep. And portfolio is done, contact is done, about is done. I know that header has been done, so all done. So now what we've done in this step, to summarize, we created this reference which is empty, and we assign this reference as a property of reference to each of the section component, and then we link that empty reference to the actual reference property of that DOM elements to make sure that reference referring to that section on the DOM. So once we've done this, we're halfway through. The next thing to think about is whenever we click, how do we tell the computer to find that section using this reference? Because the reference here already, right? We're going to use a function to handle that on-click events. Remember what I told you? If you have events, in the child component, it's supposed to raise that events, and in the parents component, it's supposed to handle that events. Eventually, the event's going to be handled on the page of the app.js because all of these sections are contained here. But the child component header, which is the one that has the navigation in it, will raise that event when the user clicks the navigation button, right? So here what I'm going to do is to create a function called handle section active and make that equal to, we'll have to tell React which section target you are looking at or you want to refer to. So it'll pass in the target as a parameter, and then that one equals to fat arrow, double curly braces. So far, we just want to console.log. Console.log.target. Let's see if we can get that target so far. And then this function must be raised in the child component because the app.js is a super parent component. It handles these click events, but it must be raised down here in one of the child component. And we know that the header is the child component that contains the navigation, which can read these events. So we just pass that in. We give a new property called section active, using that property to link that function name handle. All done. Okay, this is section active property, and then we link that function in over here. In this way, we can pass in this function into the child component header. And then I'm just going to copy that property name inside the header. We're going to pass in as a second property over here when we do the object destructuring. And once we destruct it, we're going to use it. And think about where you're going to raise that on-click events. You're going to raise that on-click events in the navigation list item over here, right? The navigation list item already have a nav click function, which is this one, and that one is linked to the nav handle nav on click events over here. So supposedly, our section active should be part of this function, right? Whenever the user clicks the nav list item, this function will be triggered, which is this one. And this one not only will set the new active status of each navigation link, but also will set the active status of each section. It will handle 2 jobs. Is that a problem? No problem. It can handle 2 jobs perfectly. Okay? So now let's just put that in over here. And down here, we're just going to write this part is the mapping code that we did. In the end, we set the nav list to the new list because we want to change the active status of each navigation link. And down below, we're just going to set the active status for each section. So we say section active, brackets. However, the section active going to take in the new variable called a target. Here we only have the variable ID, so we need that variable name. So what do I do is that I change or amend this function. Instead of ID solely, I put in target as well. So it has a second parameter passed in, and this one can be used in this function target. So now you have it in full, okay? But not finished yet, because you amend that function with 2 parameters. However, here, if you look at the navigation list item component, you're still taking 1. We need a second parameter, which is the section target. Do we have that? Magically, if you have that, I pre-designed this data file. It's very logical and scientific. It has that target property in there already. Previously, we used ID to identify which nav we have clicked. Now we use the target property to identify which section to go, right? So we're going to use this one. Instead of passing in item._id solely, we're going to pass in item.target as well. So now you can use this one as another parameter which passes in here. Soon as this one gets passed in, this onClick event, a nav onClick, is this function, handle nav onClick, which is this one. And now we save that, this target gets popped into this function. We shouldn't have a big problem. Let's go back to the browser. Yeah, it's still working. Let's see if we click on anything, it should show you something. See, whenever I click on the about, just don't worry about that error message. It's something with a promise. Once we click on that, resume, you will see that on the console, the resume logs out. Service, portfolio, contact, about, home. The home target is a header because we use the header as a tag. So it's all working perfectly, right? So this is how we link the navigation to the parents component, because so far in the handling section active, we just console.log that target instead of doing the genuine animation, right? But so far we know that everything has been linked perfectly together. Now the next job is to handle that section active. We cannot just purely log that on the console. So I delete this to write our function. The way we do so is to use this sections array, because that one has set all the section data with a name and a reference in it, okay? So we use that to do a mapping. Whenever the user click on the navigation, if the target of the navigation met the actual name of that section, we're going to go to that section, right? And do all the animations in between. So here we will say that the section dot map, this one refers to the above array. We're going to do a map, and then inside we're going to handle for each section arrow function. If that section's class name actually contains the target, which is the one we are looking at, we are going to go to that section and also show that section, right? So the logic here is if that section dot ref dot current. This is the way we use the reference hook. When I say for each section dot ref dot current, it actually refers to that entire section. Let me show you in this way first. We're not going to do the if function. I'm just going to console.log everything on the console first. Section dot ref dot current. So once we've done that, we do a mapping. We take all the sections. And then we want to see the section ref, and then we want to see the current to see what the log can give you. And here, I click the about. As you can see, all of those sections.current .ref.current has been logged on the console. It's the entire section. You see? It's that entire section that we built has been console.logged here. So basically what this line means is the same as select elements by section name, select elements by query, select elements by ID, that kind of things, and how you write the vanilla JavaScript. In React.js, we use .ref.current. .current means that the current one referred to. Just because in the previous step, we have done the ref equals to the ref recreated this linking. That's why here the ref.current can show that about section. Okay? If we do not do this linking, nothing will be ever shown. Right. So we know that so far we can actually access that section. But on the second thought you think about, depending on what the section is going to show or hidden, we must put a CSS animation or the class name for the CSS to animate on for the section to show and disappear. If the section is active, we allow it to show. If the section is inactive, it will disappear without show. So before we handle the rest of the code, we should think about or design a CSS class that will assign to each one of those sections to make sure they're supposed to be hidden or appear, right? So in this app.css file, what I will do first is I'm going to finalize my section general CSS setting so that to organize the way for the section to show and disappear. In here, what I will do, I paste it in and explain. Section general, for each section, we wanted to have the overflow hidden position absolute with a width of 100%, top half of the screen, bottom 0, opacity 0. This means that it's fully transparent, invisible, visibility hidden. Okay? So basically means that when we don't touch that section, or we do not want to trigger that section is invisible, disappear. However, I'm going to use a class name to enable the appearance of that section, which is this one. When the section got a class name of the section show, it actually becomes the opacity 1, basically means it's non-transparent, and it becomes visible. You see the difference? So the section's appearance or disappearance depending on a single section class name, which is the section show. This is the key things for us to handle in our JavaScript. On the click function, we must be able to toggle that section show class name. Only the one that we target at will have this class name included. The remaining section class name will kick out this class name. That's the logic behind it. Okay? So as long as you understand this, we can go back here and tell you how to write it. Instead of a console.log, what we're going to do is that first, when the user clicks on the navigation, the logic is the same. We're going to remove all of the active sections at first, and then find the one we are targeting at and put the active class to that one solely. So this will be like section.ref.current.classList. This class list is the same as your vanilla JavaScript. Remember, in vanilla JavaScript, you will select element by ID, which is the front part, and then that element.class name is the same logic, right? If that element class list, we're going to remove all the active section name, section-show. We remove everyone, and then we're going to find which one we are targeting at. If the section.ref.current.id, because we use the ID to identify each one, if the actual section ID triple equals to the one we target at, the one we target at is depending on the navigation which one we click on. Because remember, whenever we click on the navigation, this target variable gets passed in. This is how we're going to use it. If that one equal, what we're going to do here is that we're going to make that section.ref.current is to select that section. .current, select that section, make that section's class list, include that section show class name. So .add quotation section-show. So this is how we toggle on and toggle off that section show class name inside the section class list. Save, and down below we're just going to return that section. Because you done the mapping for that section, you now have all the sections with or without that class name. You have to return it to finalize this function. So we return that. So now, whenever we click on that section, we will have that section show or section show added or removed. So only one will have that section show class name included in this class name, which is the one that we actually target at. Okay? So this is how the entire function is working. Let's just test out if this function is working in our browser. So going back to the browser, Let me just reload the page for now. Close off the console, we're not going to use it. Let me just click on the about. As you can see, the about title shows up. Resume, the about gone, the resume go back. Service, that one switch. Portfolio switch, contact switch, back to home, all disappear because the home is active now. These are the remaining 5 are all non-active, right? So our code is working. Only one shows at a time. Be careful when you use the use reference hook. Normally we do not need to select element inside the React app unless have to. Say for example, we are doing this. Another way of doing this kind of website is to use the multiple page idea. You can put these sections into different pages to do the swapping, but that's a different story. Here we do not need to create a separate page. You can see these are all actually on the same page of the website, except that we break them up into different sections and only show the one that we want the user to see. And very fancy in this way. And I like the one page with multiple section design idea because think about this is a portfolio website. I don't want to have too many pages on your portfolio website where your potential employers looking at your page at the browser, they have to jump forward and back to different pages. And using a single page with multiple sections is actually a fancier idea. So we're done this part. The next thing is, when we click on the section button, you get to see the section changes actually over here, but the banner, which is the header part, stay the same. You still have the big banner image and also this big title. It's supposed to shrink down and move to the top accordingly. How do we do that? It's a very simple amendment. It's that when the user actually click on the home link, it should trigger that home header navigation. We have to write a function or amend our existing function of that home trigger event. How do we do that? Let me show you. So we go into the header, and then inside the header CSS, which I have a pre-designed for you, this part of the code is the animation that controls when the user click on other navigation and leave the home page, how the header should change. We add a new class name called header top and make sure that height is only 80%. That will shrink the header down straight away because previously the header takes the whole screen, which is the full 100% vertical, right? And then when we add on the header top class name, that height vertically changes to 80 pixels only. And sitting at the top, you see, position fixed, left 0, top 0. So that's going to be sitting at the top, shrinks down straight away. So the magic thing, or the key thing for us to look at, is how we're going to trigger a function that will allow this class name to be added and removed from our header. So the header top, right? So back to our header, we're going to amend this function again, because this is a function that will handle all the click events of our navigation. We're going to amend this function again to include that header animation triggering event. To do so, I'm going to add in one more use state hook, and I call it header. So that one deals with the header active or non-active events with set header. And that one going to equals to use state. Initially, we do not want this one to be turned on. Basically, the header top class should not be added. Initially, we should show the user the full page, the whole header, right? The big one. But once the user click on the non-home button, this one should be turned on. So initially, we set it to false. And we have that done. Sorry, this one should be set, not sec. And in here, over here, we're just going to add a new part into it. We say if the target, because we already have the target, which is the section that user click on, if that target triple equals to header, if you look at our nav list data, for the home section, the target is a header, right? So we use that name again. Going back, if that equals to header, what we're going to do is that we're going to set the header to false. This is the right way to do so because if the user going back to the header, which is the home page, we do not want to show that header top class. We're going to remove it, so we set this one to false. Else, if the user actually click on other target, which is the non-home navigation, we want to shrink the header. To shrink the header, we must put on the class name header top. So otherwise, we set header to true. This is how we're going to do it, okay? And once we have that, we're just going to handle the class name for the header to make the class name conditionally depending on which one we click on, the target of our navigation. And in the class name, instead of writing a static one, I'm just going to use a curly braces to wrap it. And we're going to ask the status, if that header is true, if it's true, we're going to show the class name header top. Otherwise, nothing. There's no class name added, right? So now the header name, the header top class name can be conditionally rendered to the class name of header. So once it's turned on, the header will become narrower to 80 pixels and sitting right at the top. Let's see if this thing's working. Test it out on the browser. Okay, going back. And when I click on the About page is the non-header button, right? So once this one turned on, if I click on this one, going back to our function, in this part, the if function should go to the else part, because the about, that target does not equal to header. We should set the header to true, and then if the header is set to true, this one is true, the header top class name will be turned on. So once that turned on, this part of CSS will be working, which means the header should move to the top with a height of 80 pixels only. Let's try it out. About, and you look at that, magically this thing goes there. And resume, that one comes in, services, portfolio, and contact, all working fine. And the last step, when I click on the home again, and look at that, this thing goes back. Because if I click on the home target, which we are targeting the header, then in this component, if the target equals to header, the set header will be false. If the set header is false, basically means that this part will be turned off and shown none. If the class name removes that header top, this bit will not be working. This part will be working. The height will take the 100% vertical screen. Okay, so this is the logic behind it. Very, very cool, right? Very, very cool design. And that one shrinks as well. Make the header first take the whole screen, and then when we move to other pages, make the header to show its smaller size. Very cool. And also you have the navigation here in the middle, instead of seeing at the right top or on the side menu, which is a typical way of building that navigation. This is like a very non-typical way. And also besides, it's a portfolio website. For people to look at your navigation at a better angle, put it in the middle is absolutely okay. Okay? So we have done the section switch. There's a few more things left. Down here, which is the navigation, we're supposed to add a few social icons. It's a very easy job. Let me just do it real quick. So down below the header, well, down the nav bar, so below the nav bar, I want to add on those social links. And to do so, we'll just create a div dot social links tab. And inside here, we're actually going to build another list that contains all the icons from the Bootstrap icon. And instead of writing that list directly into the header page, what else we should do? Should we put it into a separate component and then import that component over here? That sounds like a better idea and a more professional way of handling things, right? So instead of the refactoring process, I would rather, in my component folder, create a new file called social links item.jsx. Enter. Close off those that is currently not going to be used. Yep, and then RFCE to create that. And also I want to do a CSS file for it. Social links item.css over there. And then right above, I'm just going to import it. Yeah, that's in. As soon as that's in, I start to build the actual component, not a div. It's going to be an anchor tag. You can put in the actual URL of your social media over here, but I'm just going to use a hyphen, a hash. And then inside here, we're going to put in the Bootstrap icon. So that's going to be the I with the class name. The Bootstrap icon works in a way that it has a static part, which includes the BI and the BI hyphen. But after it depending on which icon you put in, right? If you do not see, you go ahead and see the Bootstrap icon, and you click on any one of those, you see its class name starts with the bi and then the bi, and then after this hyphen, that thing becomes dynamic. So the second half of the class name is dynamic, and will decide which icon you're going to finally use. So because of that, here I'm just going to put the first part as a static class name. To make it dynamic, I also going to use the temporary literal. So we put on the backtick, put in the static part of the class name, and then we do a money sign curly braces. Here we're going to make sure that icon name pass in as the property name of name. So in that way, you can make your social icon dynamic, depending on what you want to use, right? So we have that one done, and then we're going back to the header. What we're going to do here, we're going to import that social. Social links item. Import that. Check the above, that one has been imported. And in here, we just need to inject one thing as a property, which is the name. So we put in name as a property. That one equals to, that's just going to be a string. If you're going back to the Bootstrap, and then you go back to the icon page and you search for Twitter, add two now, because the old Twitter one is Bluebird, and also the new Twitter X. So we use the new one because it has changed. And you can see the second part of it is just Twitter X. So just copy that and put it in. Okay, so apply the same logic for the remaining three. I'm just going to copy and paste in. Now we have 4 icons. I know this is repeating. The ideal way to do so is that you create a, like what we did in the nav list data, something like this. You create a social list data to put in all of your icons. You can define your icon here and then map that into this social links item component. But this is not too many. I'm just leaving you to do that as a practice. I'm just writing it like a 4 component. And then you can see it's there. Okay, it's showing off perfectly on the DOM. Haven't done the CSS yet, so we're gonna rule it in the CSS file. So in here, I'll just paste in. We give a social link top to margin to top 40 pixels, display flex, and we rule the anchor tag in it, give the color, give the hover effect, and then make sure it responses on the smaller size devices. And then you look at that. All decent, right? Very cool, all decent. And then this goes away, this moves back. That's all working. All working fine now. Super cool, super cool. So we have perfectly done all the things inside our header. And then the next step for us to do is to focus on each individual section now. So now let's move to that about section. Here we have set a beginning section structure for that one, but we haven't built it in detail. So inside here, instead of writing the title straight away, what I'm going to do is that I'll write a div with a class name of container, and also about me. So inside here, we're going to wrap everything of the about section. We want to put it into a container so that it wouldn't take the whole screen width. It will narrow down to the middle part of it and still showing the background image on the edge. So that will give you that kind of a page feeling. And the first thing we're going to set up is the section title. So what I will do, I will create a separate component for the section title, because this title component will be applied for each individual sections, not just the about one, but also the portfolio, the resume, and the services contact. So in the component folder, what I will do, I'll create a section title component, JSX, and then very quickly, we create a CSS name, CSS file with the same name, and import it back. That one. And once we have the section title in the about, we're just going to import that section title component. Import it. See, it's now being loaded in. So, but what do we want to put in into that section title component? Very simple. Instead of writing the text worth. The div should have a class name called section title. And in here, we're just going to have a h2. We can pass in quite a few properties from the parents component. So for example, we'll pass in the section title as a dynamic variable and also a subtitle as well. So here in the h2, we're just going to display that section title. And then we'll put a paragraph tag just to display that subtitle. Whenever you want to write JavaScript, you have to wrap it with double curly braces. Okay, so now it's done. So going back to the about page in the section, the job left for us is just to set up that title and the subtitle property. So here is a title. We're going to name it about. So that's going to be a string, sorry. The capital A. And then a subtitle, a string. Learn more about me. Done. Okay, very simple, very handy. So if you're going back to that browser and go click on the about, you'll see that's there already, and it's aligning together with that header name because these are all wrapped inside a container, which will leave you that white margin on both sides. But it's not the way I want it to be look like. What I will do, because the section title is going to be applied on every single section, instead of putting the CSS in the section title CSS, we could also do it over here, or put it into the section title CSS, and that shouldn't be a problem. That's okay. And then we'll go to that, and I'm just going to copy and paste the thing that I prepared before over here. So we have the section title h2, give a font size, and also the section h2 given a pseudo element, which is like an underscore, and also we give a bit of rooting to the paragraph, and that will look much nicer. You can see that's what it looks like. Yep. So in the app.css file, there are just a few general settings I haven't finalized so far. I'm going to put in a bit of a setting for the container. For the container, we give a padding as well, so instead of it touching right at the top. So once we've done that, we can see this is working all nice and easy. And yeah, that's pretty much what we can do so far. Done that. All cool. Can see? We give a bit of padding, give a bit of background for the container. We've done that for the container, which is a semi-black background with some kind of a certain level of transparency and a super strong blur effect. Give a padding, and then once we have that background and blur effect, you can see it blurs the image behind it. So far, I only got a title. That's why it only shows this small area. Once we put in all the things, it will extend to the bottom of the page. All right, so that one's done. The section title is has been perfectly isolated out of the main page, so we can reuse it next time. And for the about page, down below the section title, we're going to create a row to load our remaining information. And inside the row, we're going to put in our profile image. So here I just choose a image from the online resources, but you can put in your own image here as your profile image. So to do so, we'll give a column. On a larger screen, we'll give a column 4. And inside it, we'll create an image tag. And alt will just be me, so this is your own image, and give a class name of image fluid. So image source in React.js, you cannot just put the directory here. It won't work that way. But alternatively, what you can do is to import that profile image above as an object. So here we say import profile image from. You find out a folder. // means go back to the previous folder, and then we found our image folder. Inside our image folder, we have our profile image. I'll show you. This is the profile image. So we're going to use this one over here. We import that image and we put it over here as an object. profile image. That's how you can insert image in React.js. Right, once you save that and going back and see your images over there. Quite nice. And that one only takes a 4 column. Remember in the Bootstrap that each row contains 12 columns. If now we have used the 4 column, the remaining 8 column will be down below. And we say that div.column on large size devices, it will take 8 tag. And inside we just give a padding to top of 4 pixels and also padding on the largest size of devices of 0. And then also a class name of content. That's it. So we define your self-description area. And then underneath, we're just going to put in the content you want to say. So say, for example, you are a UX and UI and also web designer. Give a bit of a brief introduction of yourself and make it italic. So once you've done that, going back, you'll see your introductions there. Okay? This is the first part, the first row, which you're going to present to the user. And inside this 8 column, down below the title and the brief description, we can put in a new row where you have all the personal details. I'm just copy and paste in because these are just typing. We don't waste our time. And I explain it for you. We put in the new row, half-half. The first half will take 6 columns. The second half will take the remaining 6 columns. And you can put in a list where you can define your birthday and your email, contact detail, address. And so here is your age, your qualifications, and also your educations, that kind of things. Okay, so you save it. You have your second row inside that 8 column. You go back to your browser. That looks very nice and decent, even without giving any CSS styling. And that's another row. We close it off. Down below this row, we can put a long description of yourself. The previous one is like a model, a slogan that you want to say, a brief one. Down below the row, we can put a long one. So just a paragraph with a lorem. You can write anything you want. And if you're going back, you can see that's there. So this is pretty much how you can do your self-introduction in the About page. And so far, we're all good. And next job is to put on some CSS to make sure that looks nice. So I'm going there. Inside the CSS, I'm just copy and paste in. Pretty much it's just some rules being applied to the content, which is the this part. Because this part we have a content class to the 8 column area. We just want to define the list, the title, and also everything inside it. Once we've done that, we can see the major design is that we put a angle arrow inside it to make it look nicer. And that's all decently laid out with the proper padding and margin. Very, very cool, huh? So we have done the About page of the first part. And then what comes next to it, I want to build a counter. A counter, we're going to use a third-party library. It's like when you deliver something on the browser, you want that number to count from the beginning number to the end number, and showing a bit of the animation transition in between. Say for example, the number changes from 0 to 100. Probably you want to take 2 seconds. You want that number to grow up, to kind of have that growing up animation. We can do that using a third-party library called React.js. And then we build a counter component over here to show that effect. So we have to install that third-party library first, control backtick, and we're going to add a new terminal to do that installation. So here I'll just type in npm install react count up. So that's the name of it. So once you install this one, you can use this as a component in your DOM. So we hit enter. Very soon it will install it for you. So we've done that one. Close off this one, but leave the browser one on. And now we can build our counter over here. So down below that About Me part, which is the first container that wraps all of the personal details, we're going to create a new container. But I know that counter will be a separate component, so instead of writing it over here, I'm going to be in the component folder, create a new file called counter.jsx, hit enter RFCE to create a boilerplate, and then very quick, to create a CSS file with the same name. Enter. And then we import that CSS back. .css, done. Okay, so we want to put our counter in this component and import it here. So here we just say counter, import it, and go bracket, close it. It's been successfully imported up here. It's all here. Going back to the browser, you can see that counter is over there, touching the far left. Because we haven't given a starting or container yet, that's why it reached the far left. But you know that this one has been imported correctly to the right position. And inside the counter, we're going to do our building. So gradually you will see that instead of writing all the codes on one page and refactoring it into a component, you should have the capacity to think, where do I need a second component or a separated component, and you build that component straight away and then input it back. So in the counter, what we're going to do is same logic. We're going to create a div with a container. Let me just put it into a bracket container, and then also give a name of count. Then inside it, what we're going to do is that we're going to create some counter data so we can map into that counter items. We're not going to write all of the items that need to be counted over here. What I will do, I'll create a counter data in our data folder and I map it over here. These also could be static data or dynamic data. It's up to you. So I have prepared those counter data for you, and inside you will have this data here. Each data comes as an array and contains all the counter objects. Each will have an ID, will have the ending number, will have the duration of the counter, basically means how long you want it to run. This one's run from 0 to 256, it takes 2 seconds. It means that which icon for that counter you want to use and what is the name of that icon. Basically here, just for you to have a chance to demonstrate the number of projects you have built, how many clients you have served, how many support you have provided to other IT companies or projects, have you got any award or medals or certificate, you can all list it here. It's a very cool demonstration with that counting effect. So once we have that, we're going to map this data into a counter item. So inside a counter, what we can do is to create another component called counter item. So there will be, that's going to be the child component, another child component inside it. Counter item, hit enter, and then you have that. So inside that counter item, what we can see is that we set up the structure. The counter item, because we're going to map that counter item here, it must have each individual item passed in as a property. So we take that property for now, and then we create our component. We're going to say div.countBox. We create a box. It's like a card to load all the data. And then before that, we're going to apply some bootstrap settings. Say, for example, we want it to be column on large screen of 3 row, tab, and the column on the middle side of the device is of 6 row. Basically means that there will be half. And then we're going to wrap our count box inside the bootstrap thing to make it look nice. And then in between, we're going to define which icon we use. Here I write the icon name in full, so I can just load it straight away. The icon in Bootstrap is going to be wrapped in the I tag. So I give the class name. The class name is the one that has been passed in as a property of the item. So it's the item.icon. And here's the place where you import that countup package. If you go back to the package.json, because we installed that React countup, this one here, and you can use it in your counter item. But to use it, you must import it. So you import countup from React count. No, not this one. React countup from React countup. Yeah, you must import it over here, and then you can use it down below. Over here, countup. So we're going to put in some properties for it. This one will work straight away. You don't have to build it because it's depending on the third-party library. As long as you put in the end number, it will run the counting effect for you. The end number will be the item and the property. And the duration, you must tell it how long you want it to run for the counting. That'll be item.duration. As soon as you put in those, should be working all okay. And the last thing we want to put in is a paragraph, which contains the item name. Alright, and now we have successfully used all the properties inside our counter data. So we have our count item. Count item is supposed to be injected in here, which is a container that contains all of these columns. Alright, so inside here, we're going to wrap it, give it a row, because the container contains the row contains column. That's the structure of Bootstrap. Give it a row, and inside, we're going to map our counter data into this counter item, add a counter. So how do we do so? Let me think. First we import that counter data. And then we have to set a local state to store that counter data. So we're going to use the use state hook. Now here, const counters, and then set counters. Oops. No wonder. Spelled them correctly. Set counters. We must set the initial state to the counter data. We've done that. We have our counter data ready, and that one is going to be mapped. Counters. .map. So we will have each counter mapped into our counter item. So inside the brackets, we're just going to import that counter item. Yeah, it allows us to import. Perfect. So that one has been imported above successfully. And then we know that the counter item, they will take in that item as a property, so we want to give it. But first we need to assign a key to it. So that is the React rule. Whenever you do a mapping or use JavaScript higher order array function, you're going to use a key to identify each individual item uniquely. So here we say the counter ._id, and then give the item property equals to that counter. Done. Okay. So this one, we import our counter data over here. We set the counter data into our local status, and then we map that states variable into our counter item with the item of counter as a property, and then that item contains all the information like the end, duration, icon, and name, and that thing will be presented over here. Let's just see if it's working. So back to the browser. As you can see, it's working. If we reload, yeah, it wouldn't be able to show the counting effects. The reason is because it's loading too fast. I'll tell you why. When you refresh the page, it'll go to the home page straight away without showing the about. But this counter will start to count as soon as your entire page loads, regardless if the about is showing or not, because we just set a transparency of 0. Basically means the about page is there, but it's transparent. If it's there, the counter should be working, regardless if you can see it or not. So that's the reason why we reload the page. If we go back to the about real quick, you can see this one. I'll show again. We reload, going to that really quick. You can see this one still loading a bit, right? Because this is the largest number, it hasn't been finished counting. If the number is really small, it will run up the counting process real quick. But how do we ensure, the problem is, how do we ensure the user gets to see the counting effect when they click on the about page, instead of letting the counting finish when the user is on the home page, right? So this is the bug we have to solve. We cannot just, we got a fancy thing injected, we cannot just leave it, right? It's not worth it. We spend time to build up these counting effects, and it's not even showing to the user. The key thing is that we must trigger this counting effects on the home page. Basically means whenever the about page is active, we will let this counter to take place. Otherwise, this counter will not be triggered. So we must add a variable on the state variable to decide whether the page is on home or it's on about or not on about. If it's on about, we trigger the counter. If it's not on about, we stop the counter, right? So let's think, where do we fix that issue? So far, we're just going to close off few component where we haven't run anything yet. In the about page, the header part will have the function that trigger all the sections, right? So in the header, we will know which section has been targeted, which section is active. This is the perfect place for us to decide if the user is actually on the about page. We should go to the header part. So jump to the header in the component. You look at this click events. This is the magic click events. It contains everything. So when the user click on it, we can also set up another part of the code here to see if the user actually clicked the about page. If the user clicks the about page, we are going to set the about page another status, say for example active or whatever. And then when the about page listens to that click event, it will turn on another active status, and then we can trigger that counting effect. That's how the logic works, okay? However, the click events is raised in this header component, but will eventually be handled in our parents component, which is the app, because we raise that event in the header, but the about section is going to listen to that event or take that event result, right? So the ideal place to set the final status variable, state variable for the about active is in the app.js. So in here, right at the top, before we create anything, I'm just create a local state variable, and that will be const. And we'll say that's just going to be about active. Try to make the variable name meaningful, so when you look at it, you know what's going on there. If you work in an IT company, you're going to spend quite a bit of time writing comments, just explaining what your code is all about. Otherwise, other people can't read your code, right? So this is our this is a course. It's just for us to practice. In case you forget your own code, trust me, if you put this code away like a month and you look at it again, you will forget what's going on. So a good habit is to still write some comments, simple comments, just like this. Write about, write something here, so to tell yourself, remind yourself this is what it's about, okay? And in that case, even though you look at this project after half year, you still can remind yourself of everything. But in the course, we just save it. Set about active. That one equals to use state. Initially, the about is not active, right? Whenever we click on the about navigation button, this one will be turned to true. So we set it to false. Okay, so we have that. And then we must use this set about active function, pass that as a parameter into our header, so we can raise that set active events. So here we say about active, give it a new property name, and make that equal to our set about active function. Okay, so we have that. I copy that, take it into the header, add it as a third parameter on the property name over here, and now we can use it as a second function. Just down below the handle nav on click, we say if the target triple equals to about, we're going to do something. We're going to set the about active to true, because if the target equal to about, it basically means we're on the about page, so we set it to true. Otherwise, we're going to set it to false. Right? So now you have this function super fancy and handle different type of job. This one is to handle the header animation, handle the about page active, handle the navigation active, and so the page animation as well. Everything is over here. And we have that. And now you have your header to touch that navigation, to touch that animation function. The eventual state of the about, either true or false, will be stored in this state variable. This state variable will be passed in as a property to the about page. So over here, at the about, we must put in that as a property. So the about will either be true or false. If we're targeting that page, this one will be true. Otherwise, it will be false. So about active is a property of the about page. Going back to the about page, we import that property over here. And then we can finally use it somewhere to let the counter see if that we're on the about page, the counter should be triggered. So this property will be passed as a property of the counter. We say counter active equals to about page active. If the about page is active, basically means we're on it, and should let the counter to be triggered. And then we pass in that, we're going to counter. That thing, we have to consume that property by object destruction. Let's say active. So now things get to work. Okay. How do we make things work in here? Is that we're gonna conditionally rendering this map instead of a map is straight away. Very easy. Before it, you just say if it's active, it's true-C, we're gonna counter map. Otherwise, this false-C, this thing won't work. Okay? So this is how to make it work. Let's go back to the browser, reload. On that page, now you can see all the numbers start to loading as soon as we are on the about page. You can see all of them growing up from 0 to that end number. To make it look at more real, what I will do, I'll put it on the CSS for the counter item so you can see it clearly. So in the counter.css, I'm going to load everything here. So we'll give the counts a padding. The counter box will give a padding as well to make sure its layout is proper and nice. We'll give that bootstrap icon some styling as well to make sure that we have the font of white and also the paragraph correctly set up. And now you're going back, you will see that icon has been set to the color of the theme color with all of those rounding effects and the box shadow around. So it looks pretty nice. And now I'm going back to the home page, going to the about. You will see those numbers start to load. The counting effects is very obvious. It starts to load when you are on the about page instead of when you are on the home page. This counting effect will be loading every time you go to the about page. Say for example, you move to the resume page and you go back to the about, it will be loading again. Super cool, right? So every time the people go to the about page, this shining part of the design will stand out and grab their eyes. That's what I want. Okay? Right. So we're done the count path. And let's move on to the next one. The next one is going to be a skill bar. You want to show people that I have the CSS skills, the HTML skills, the web design, the React skills, or some Photoshop skills, all of those things. You want to put your skills as a percentage in the progressive bar down below. So the next part, we're going to set those progressive things. The skill bar will be built with the same logic. We're going to have a separate component called skill. And also I have prepared a skill data for you as well. You don't need to worry about it to take down this data. I will share it in the data folder at the end. So you will have all of this data shared by me. And then you can use them straight away as a practice. So I'm just going to copy and paste in the skill data. In the data folder, we have a skill here. As you can see, for each skill, we'll have a name for it. We'll have a percentage because we're using the progressive percentage bar. And we'll give the ID for us to uniquely identify each skill. And you can adjust this data based on your personal skills because everyone says it's different. And you could add more objects in it if you have more skills. Say for example, you got 10 skills that you want to put onto your resume, you could just extend this array. Absolutely no problem. And then we're going back here, we're going to build that skill component right below the counter. So what I can do is that inside that component folder, I build a new file called skills. JSX, RFCE, then you have that skill in. And inside the skill, what we're going to do, the skill is still going to be wrapped in a container, so I'm going to write a bit of code for it. And then another name called skills. And inside it, we give a section title, or we can import a section title component here as well. So let's say that section title. So that section title is too huge for this tiny section. We're just going to build a new one instead of building that one. And in which we'll just give a h2 and tell the computer this is the skill. Okay? And down here, we'll write a new row. This row is about the skills content. And inside here, we separate the row into two parts, left and right. So on your browser, the left-hand side should have a 3 bar, the right-hand side should have another 3 bar. So we make sure they are matching each other on the two sides. So to divide those, we give a div of column large 6 column, and then that's going to take half. And then we copy that. We know this will take the remaining half. So see, when you set up a component, this is with the help of the Bootstrap how you set up the structure. Here, you just have that awareness in your brain. You don't have to concern about what it looks like at the end because the layout has been predefined by the Bootstrap. Okay? And inside each of these columns, we map our skill data into that progress bar or the skill bar, right? So we know there's going to be a mapping to another child component, and very quickly, inside the component folder, we're just going to build one called skill bar .jsx rfce, create a boilerplate. And now we're going to write a bit of code in the skill bar to make it look nice and neat. This one is going to be a class name progress. It's a progress bar. And then we're going to write a span with the class name of skill, singular. And over here, we will say that we'll give a skill name, and also we'll give a percentage, right? It's going to be a progressive bar, and inside it, we're going to have to show which skill and how many percentage you got so far. And think about which variable should we take in. When you map that skill data at this page, that skill data will be mapped into the skill bar component. At least you should take in one of the skill objects in this array, right? So here we're going to take in the child component skill. So this is when you get fluent with the React developing, you are able to write the child component before you even use them, right? You have everything prepared in your brain before you even set up here. It's like I know that I'm going to have a child component that will use this property. So just assume that if I have this property already, how am I going to apply it all across my child component? And then this child property is going to come from my parents component. When I do the mapping, all the skills in the skill array will be mapped into my child component, right? And the skill will be passed in as a property name. So inside that skill, we will access that skill.name, because in the data you have that name, percentage, ID. That's all the three properties you only have. And then we give a italic name val, and we want to make sure we demonstrate our skill percentage as well. Percentage. Okay. So down below we have our skill progress, the name and title. Below it, we're going to write the progressive bar. Again, this is the Bootstrap building stuff. You don't have to worry so much about it, and you just use their building code, and you can have everything. And I already defined the progressive bar setting for you. So here you will have the class name progress bar. The role works as a progress bar. And the key thing is that the styling. So this line I want to explain. When the skill bar gets to show to the user, you want to make sure the width of it animates. What is the width? Initially, it will have a width of 1 pixel, but it will load that skill bar based on the percentage you're given. So eventually, it will be 98% of the whole width or 95% of the whole width. So eventually, the width will be your skill.percentage. We'll use that as a CSS, as a part of CSS. And also, we only want that skill to be styled or that animation to show to user whenever the user is on the about page. Same logic applies as to the counter. If the user is on other page, that skill bar animation should not be triggered. But how do we know if the user is on about or not? We have done it before in our previous component counter using that active property, right? So here in the skill bar, we can use that again. If it's on the about page, we should have that active equals to true. If it is true, we want to show that style of the skill bar width of that skill percentage. Otherwise, the skill bar will be like a very small and narrow one with a width of 1 pixel. Basically means it's not showing to the user. Okay, so this is how you set up your skill bar with 2 properties. And now you have that in our skill, we can map it. It's a bit of a trick. Because of us dividing our 6 skills into 2 columns, and each will take half, we have to map it twice, ensure that the first half goes to the left-hand side, the second half goes to the right-hand side. So here, in the curly braces, we say skill, and skills dot slice. Yeah, we have to import that skill first. have to import that data first. Like what we did before, you need to import the data before you use it. Skills data, we have it in, and ideally you want to set up a local variable to store that skill data. So we import a use state hook, and here you just want to set your skill local data skill. It's a good habit. If you use that skill data and as a variable and map it straight away down here, it's working all fine, no problem at all. But later on, if you want to make your website fully dynamic, more than likely you will do data fetching from the backend API and stuff, and you have to change too much on your code. So whenever I will set up a local state variable to hold the external data, because after all, this data is from the external, it's from other folders, it's not local, and store it in the local state variable. That's just a good developing habit. Set skills equals to use state. I'm just being lazy in this part. Just set the initial state of that state data, of that skill data straight away. If you want to do it slightly more professional, you can import that use effect hook, and inside that use effect hook, you set the data to that third-party data. Yeah, so depending on you, how you want to use it. So now we have the skill. Let's write it here. So we want to make sure that our skill got mapped, but instead of writing the map directly, we have to slice it, because remember we need to divide the data half-half. We want the first 3 items goes to the left-hand side, the remaining 3 go to the right-hand side. So here I will say slice. Slice means that you want to cut off part of your array. We want to index 3 to index 0 to index 3. 3 is not included. That basically means index 0, 1, 2 to be sliced out from your array, and then you chain that map function. See, you need to chain it. After slicing, you only have 3 items, and you map that 3 items into your skill bar. Set arrow. And then here we import that skill bar. Close it. Remember, we need to assign a key whenever you want to do a mapping. So that will be your ID. And we want to pass in the about, we have that active status here. We pass in as a active property for the counter, and the same logic will apply for the skill as well. So we're just going to pass in here, take that active. Later on, we'll fix that about page when we import the skill component. So now we have that. We pass in that active equals to active, and then we pass in that skill equals to skill. So now you have these objects passing as a property to each individual child component of the skill bar. And the same logic apply, we're just going to copy that. And put it down here. Instead of from 0 to 3, we make it from 3 to 6. Because remember the previous one, the last index is not included. So this is a 0, 1, 2. So here is a 3, 4, 5. We'll make it to 6. 6 not included. All set. And to make things a bit safer, what I'm also thinking of, we can actually put the active over here as well. If active is trucy, we're going to render the skill. Active is trucy, we're going to render the skill. So that will make things even safer. So we are on the about page, and then I'm going to render, and then I'm going to allow that skills mapping. And then as soon as I map it into the child component, the styling is going to double check if it's active. If it's active, we're going to show the percentage of your skill. Otherwise, it will remain a width of 1 pixel. Okay? So this is how we're going to do things. And the last step is going back to the parent component. You see, we have started a way of working backwards. We started from building our child component, and we walk backwards to our parents component. Once we have done everything, this is the super child, this is the child, this is like the grandparents, okay? Grandparents, and this is the parents, and this is the grandchild. And after we've done all the child component, we import it back to our super parents component. And that will be our skills. That one there. Close angle brackets. Remember, we need to give active property equals to that about active. What's going on here? I missed half of the curly braces. Okay, done. So now this one gets passed in here, it takes that property over here and applies it everywhere. Okay, so now it's on here, as you can see. I haven't given any style yet, that's why it looks so ugly. But if I go back, you will see that it's there. To make it look nicer, we must put in the CSS for it. Let's see if I've done it correctly. Nope, I haven't created a CSS file. See, this is how I move so quick. I'll just quickly create a skill.css. That one there, and then import that one. The good habit is always import your CSS before your other components, because if in your CSS files that has some rulings for the child component, it will apply. If you import your CSS after you import the child component, your child component might have a chance to miss some starting code. Okay, so now we move on to the skill. I'm just gonna copy and paste in all the stylings. Very simple. For the progress bar, we give a certain height and make sure it display block. We remove the border radius because it looks really ugly. And we set up the paddings. We make sure it has a proper font weight, and also we make sure the progress bar, which is essentially showing, to have the background color above theme color. So once you've done that, you go back and look at this. It looks amazingly beautiful with that progressive setting. And then we're just going back to home, going back to there. Just gonna reload our page, going back to about. So you can see this one loaded perfectly. Absolutely amazing, amazing. Cool. So skill bar is done for this one. The data has been used, the CSS has been set correctly, this one as well. So now if you look at our about page, it is just go a little bit beyond that 80 lines, which is okay. Normally I will handle my single page, the numbers of lines within 80 or just slightly beyond that. Too much, if it's within 100, it's still acceptable. Beyond 100, it's going to be very messy because it takes people to keep scrolling to finalize your code. If it's that situation, you're just going to wrap things into a separate component. Say, for example, this one. If you want to have this in a separate component, 100% okay. This row is your personal details with your birthday. You can wrap it up, put it somewhere else, and import it. The reason why I didn't do so, one is for you to practice. The other one is that not necessary. This thing is not going to be reused. It's not a repetitive component. It's just going to be used one time and there. So I just leave it there. Okay. And the last thing we want to put it on our about page. The about page is the most sophisticated one in this project, except the header page. We want to list all your personal interests below the skills. Okay, so now let's just do that. I know that here I'm just going to add one more line, which is the import of that interests component. So let's do so. In our component folder, we're going to create a file called interests. JSX. That one's done, and very soon, in case I forget, I'm just gonna create that CSS file and link between these two. Plural. Okay, so that one's done. The interest file is not going to be a complicated one. It's just I supply you with the person's interest data, and you map that data into the interest item component. Very easy, okay? Delete that. Again, we write a new container to wrap this up. Div container. And that container is going to be our interest container. And inside it, we want to have a section title. And we say give a h2 tag, and that's going to be the interest. Okay, so we have our interest component there. We're going to inject it here. And it has the auto import, perfect. So once we import it, check the above, it's there. Going back to the browser, the title has been there, okay? Looks all good and decent. And the next thing in this area is just going to be a mapping. So we're going to wrap everything in a row. And inside the row, we're just going to do interest data mapping. I have prepared all of those interest data for you. So now let me just copy and paste that. So we have that. And all the interest name are Lorian, so you can change it because I don't know each individual person's interest, what you like specifically in the web development field. You can put those in. And you give a special color for each one because I want this one to be fully dynamic. Not every icon have the same color. I want them to be super colorful and eye-catching. And give them a different icon. Here we use another library, which is the Remix library. Remember in our app.js, we imported multiple fonts. And the major one that we used in this project is the Bootstrap icon. We also have used the Remix icon and the box icon. So the one that started with RI, Remix icon, they look nice and neat as well. You can have a look at our website. Just Google Remix, you will find it. So here we're going to map this interest data into our interest item component. So very quickly in your brain, you will think, well, I'm not going to write out my component file here. I have to build a separate component that is called interest item. Okay. Tab. And then you have that. Inside your interest item, what you want to put in is that you think about here, when you do the mapping, you're going to map into that interest data. So it must be interest mapped into this interest item component. You must pass in the property for your child component, for the child component to access this data. What is that property? Ask yourself that question, right? That's going to be the individual interest object passed as a property of the child component. And inside here, we just have to define what you want your interest child component looks like. So we give a div that's going to be a column of 3 on large screen and tab. And we want it to be column of 4 on the middle size. Make sure I have the margin to top of 4. And that's it. And inside, we just want a div that has this icon box to wrap our icons. So in the icon, we have our remix icon, which comes as a I tag as well. So we just give a class name. That class name will be equal to the class name you put in here as the icon. So this is the remix code. Very similar to Bootstrap. It just they have a different name to define the icon shape. So you just put in that dynamic class name for that icon, interest.icon. And then the key thing here is that to give a different style. To do the inline styling in CSS, in React, you must pay attention to is it takes 2 double curly braces. The first curly braces is to tell the React this is going to be a JavaScript. The second one is the CSS curly braces. It's a JavaScript object. Okay, so it takes the CSS as a JavaScript object for it to work. We want to make sure that color equals to the color we defined in our data file. And then last but not least, you have to tell what is the name of your interest. Okay, that's it, all done. Very simple, right? So now we have our child component with that property in. Inside our parent component, we have to do a bit of a changing. And then the first thing is to import our data. Yeah, that one's in. So once it's in, the good habit is to store it in a local variable, like we have practiced for many times. So we say that use state hook. And down here, we set a local state variable to store that interest data. Interest. And set interest equals to the use state hook. The initial data will be our interest data. Alright, that's it. So you have now your local state variable to store that external interest data, which is this one. And then the next step is to do a big mapping down here. So interest.map. And for each interest, we're going to do a fed arrow function and map it into our child component. Interest item. Oops, so quick. Forgot the angle brackets. Yep. And then we're going to pass in a key property for them to be uniquely identified. This is just the React rule. And then we're going to pass in the interest property which will allow our child components to access the data, because we pass in here, and then in the child component we can consume that property and use it there, right? So that's how things work, and that's it, done. Okay, nothing super complicated, just a simple data mapping. If you are familiar with this map and filter or reduce, for each, all of those JavaScript higher order array function, you will see that your programming skills in terms of JavaScript will improve a lot, I guarantee you. And then down here, you will see all of those things has been injected, and the alignment has no problem. It has been aligned perfectly because of a bootstrap setting. And it's just the font size is incorrect and no background effects. We're just going to do those in the CSS for adjustment. So in here, in our interest, going to interest.css, I'm just going to put in the interest here. So for the icon box, we give a bit of background color, which is somehow black but slightly transparent. And also we make sure that all the icons have the proper paddings and font sizes as well. And we give a bit of a ruling to the title and make sure it has a very slight hover effect. So with that, we're going back. As you can see, when you hover on it, it's like it's shining off a little. But this one has now been aligning all correctly and properly. By the way, these icons I just picked randomly. I didn't, because I didn't have the name for the interest, so I just put a random icon there. So when you build your own project, we put in your interest, you can use the icon that actually matches that name of the interest in terms of meaning, right? As you can see, the style is different. This icon looks so different from the design style of the Bootstrap one, but it's more standing out, it's more bold, and give people different feelings for that interest part. Okay, so this is how we build our entire about page. It contains many parts actually. It contains the first part is your personal introduction, and then your counter, and then we've done the progressive bar, and the last bit is the interest bar. Okay, this is like the hardest part of the entire project, except the home page, because here we need to set up the navigation and all the functions here. So now we're going to that about page. You will see this one has been beautifully loaded up, and it only takes like a part of the screen instead of the whole size, and you can still see with that background black blur effect, this background image sort of blurry underneath this shade that looks really amazing, right? Super, super cool. Alright, so then our next step is to move on quickly to build the remaining few sections like the resume. The resume has those fantastic CSS looking, it's like a real resume on your Word document as well. I like that part. And then let's just move on to it. Firstly, we're just going to close off those documents that have been used in our about page. So the about page is pretty much all done. It's a large one. And let's just open up the settings for the resume. And over here we have in our app file loaded our resume already. You have set up the entire structure for your application, and now you just need to complete them one by one. In our resume so far, we only got a title, and supposedly we should use our section title instead of the random title over there. But luckily, we have pre-built our section title, so instead of rewrite it, we could just import that section title straight away over there. This is the beauty with React. You are allowed to reuse the component you have built. And we create a div. Again, we're going to have to wrap everything inside a container. Otherwise, it will take the full screen. And inside here, we import our section title as a component. Give a property name title, and that's going to be our resume. Oops, it's going to be a string. And then a subtitle. Oh, that curly braces counts as given. So just type in check my resume. So now it's done. And down below here, we're just going to write a row. If you're going back to here, you will see that resume title has been perfectly presented. Because you pre-built that component, as long as you change the title and subtitle, it will show exactly the same as what you want to see in the about page. So this one are pre-built. Every time you use the title, it will be the same. So in down here, we're going to finalize the remaining code, and it's just a CSS typing, HTML and Bootstrap typing. So what I will do, I'll just real quick copy and paste those code and explain for you. It's not hard at all. So in here we write a row. The row divided into two parts. The left hand 6 column and the right hand 6 column. And in each column, we're just going to put in your personal resume data. Say, for example, on the left-hand side, you want to have a summary of yourself. We give the class name a resume title. This is your own name, your personal description, your address and contact details. And then on the left-hand side, you want to summarize your educations and which university you attended, what is the highest degree you have ever achieved. That's all. And then on the right-hand side, it's going to be your professional experience and your job title, when you work at a company, how long you have worked for. And this is like the main responsibility and role when you're in that role. So you just want to list all the things there. Save it. Without giving any CSS, it looks beautiful already. Right? This is not bad, it looks decent. But the thing I want to change is that we remove the bullet point over here, and then I want to add that the dotted line in between the links or the items in your resume is like a tracking it in our theme color. Okay, so let's just do the CSS part for it. This part, the highlights is the CSS, because I want to make sure it looks the same as a genuine resume that people write on the paper. So I put in the CSS here. We defined our resume title, give the font size, import it here. And then we have the resume item. We have given a certain padding. We give a margin to top and margin to left. And also we define the H4 and H5 for the font size. For the list, we make sure that the list style is none. The magical things that I want to see here is the resume item before the pseudo elements. That actually give us the dots, the green, the cyan dots, besides that border, right? This is the pseudo elements that we created on the left-hand side of each resume title. So we're creating that way for each resume item. Before that, we make sure the position is absolute, so we can put it anywhere we want. It's like a square, make the border radius 50, it actually should be percentage. And then left 9 pixels, so that's why it's on the left-hand side. And then with the background color and the border all set to the theme color. Alright, so now you can see, as soon as we paste those in, this resume page looks amazingly beautiful, like a real paper. The potential employer seeing this, the color and the design theme and the background, the entire theme, will grab their eyes directly, right? They will have to look at in details what's going on with your education track and your career path, okay? And once they get interested, they will contact you straight away over here. If you have more educations or more career paths, you can just keep extending this. By the way, this page is entirely scrollable. Even though we break the section into different parts, it's entirely scrollable, so they can scroll to the next part if they finish reading the current one. Look at the switch. The swapping between about and resume is also amazing. There's a gentle, smooth pop up and pop down. With one showing off, the other one disappears progressively. This is a really amazing animation, right? Super cool, guys, super cool. Okay, the resume part is done. So just in case that you haven't got a chance to look at this, I just show it again. We import the title, we put it in a row, and all the things has been done perfectly inside this list. With the support of Bootstrap, I would say that in terms of the responsive framework, Bootstrap is a really good master. Without that, we have to write heaps of code to make sure that that thing is responsive. But now, even though I haven't done any other settings, if we go to the mobile view, let me just show you, you can see this one becomes responsive straight away. I didn't do any coding. The Bootstrap will help me to set these things. Okay, so that's the beauty of it. Alright, the next part will be our service and our portfolio, and we're also going to go through those things very quick because they are also going to be just data mappings and some card designs about CSS. So we close off the resume part, and then here we opened up the next part, the service. And so far in the service, we only got a title in it. I just want to make sure that both the component file and the CSS file are opened up. And then I'm going to change it. Same logic, we have to wrap everything inside a container. So just say div.container. And we're going to import our section title for that service. Give a title. Services and the subtitle. my services. Yep, that's done. So as soon as you done that, and go back to the browser, looking at the service, the title is there because we have previewed this section title component. And then down below it, inside the container, by the way, we're going to create a row. And inside this row, same logic, we're going to wrap all of our service data into it. I'm just going to go real quick. So the service data, and we put it in the data folder. As you can see, each have an icon, the name, and a brief, give the ID, and all of those service objects are contained in this service array. And going back, so here we're going to import it. Import our service data because we're going to do a mapping. So very quickly, we're going to set up a local state variable to store that service data state. Const services set services. You should now be very familiar with all these things now, but you have been seeing me typing this thing all through the course. And the initial state is going to be used, the service data going to be set to the initial state, and now our local state variable services should have the same data as the service data. The next step is to do the mapping. It's going to be mapped into a service item. So very quickly in the component, we're going to create a file called service item. JSX, RIFCE, you have that item there. So inside it, we know that because this is the mapped component of the child, it's going to take a injected property called service. And inside here, instead of writing that, I'm just copy and paste this CSS, this HTML code for our service card. Looks like that. It will take our service. That's very wrong. Yep. It will take our service property and access the icon, name, and brief, which is the one here, icon, name, brief. All right. We have seen this many times. That's why I go a bit faster. And we have that done. And now we can do the mapping. So over here, we have also done the mapping for many times. You should now be able to pause the video for 1 minute and write that mapping function by yourself. But at the end, it's going to be like this. We have our local service data mapped into our service item component with a key assigned to it and also the service property assigned to it. Since we have this, we can consume that service property over here. All right. So last step is to add on the service CSS to have this entire section done. So in the service.css file, copy and paste all the CSS for it. So you will have the icon box setting for that one. Give a padding, certain padding and a beautiful background setting. And you also want to root the icons for it. Give a certain height and width to make sure it looks square. And also, you want to set up a pseudo element because essentially, service item not defined. I know what's going on. But we haven't imported. Here, we're just going to import it. All right. Make sure you import it above. And now you go back. It's there. Because essentially, you will see there's a double square effect. There's a square after this square. And the second square is going to be a pseudo element. So what you want to make sure is that you will have that pseudo element by slightly changing its position of the left and top by 8 pixels. And also it's a square. So once you have that set, we're just going to define the hover effect. When the thing's on hover, you want to make sure the background color changes and also the pseudo element color changes as well. So this is just pretty much define the hover effect. And then going back, you will see initially it had a background of semi-gray. When you hover on it, the background go to our theme color, which is the cyan one. The front square background color changes to white. The back square background color changes to a brighter cyan. So that's what it looks like in my services. And by the way, you can change all of these based on your personal, real services, what you want to provide to the company or to individual clients. That's all. So super cool and standard services. And in here, you could put a link if you want, the service name, which is this one. When the user click on it, you can either lead the user to a second page or the place you want the user to see. Okay, so I give that option to you to set it up. So now we have finalized building our service page, and the last part will just be the, or not the last one, the second last one, the portfolio. The portfolio has a good thing to learn, because inside the portfolio page, we're going to have a filter, which is the React.js filter, and we're going to base on our filter list item name to select the one that you want to show in the end. So we're going to work on this one. So first open the portfolio, and then the portfolio.css, make sure it has been successfully imported. So to build this portfolio, instead of using the local data file, like what we did here, these are all static JavaScript data file, I'm going to show you a different way of injecting the data. We're going to call from a mock API, and we fetch data from there, and then map the data into the portfolio item, okay? So what we're going to do is that inside a public folder, we're going to create a new folder called API. So a new folder called API. And inside API, I'm just going to put in the portfolio data file that I built already. This is a JSON file. And you look at the name extension .json. So it's not going to be like the standard JavaScript data file where you can load it straight away. The JSON is a different format data, but this is like a real mock of the backend URL, where in the real project, where you are fetching data from the external outside, you're probably going to fetch from the JSON API, which is the RESTful URL. If you want to access this JSON file on your browser, you can also do so. Just in your browser, just type in the JSON, localhost 3000, and let me see which one I'm going to use. Let me try this one. No, it's not working. I'm going to change the name. We're just going to say localhost 3000 /API /portfolio data.json. Yep, you can have it now. So this is how we fetch that data. Looks exactly the same as how we fetch the data from a genuine RESTful API endpoint. Okay, that's what it looks like. We have our portfolio image URL stored in it. I give the empty title and brief and everything, except the category. I do categorize them based on different jobs. The reason why I didn't fill it in, because if I fill it in, it will just be Lorium. It's for you to fill up your own portfolio title and brief. Okay, so we have the JSON file, and we're just going to fetch that from that backend. By the way, the URL we just used, you can't see it, but I put it over here. It's this one, localhost /API /portfolio JSON, which is the thing we stored in the public folder under API folder. Okay, so that's how we fetched it. And once we have that, what we're going to do here is, first we're going to set up a title for the portfolio as usual. Very simple job. So just going to create a container. And inside the container, we import our section title and give that a title name of portfolio. And then we're going to give a subtitle name of my work or my portfolio. I just do not want to use the same words. My work. So you have the title now. Going back to the browser, you will see that one there. This is the service, and that's the portfolio, my work. And you have that. And down below, we're going to create a new row and use that to contain our portfolio data. But our portfolio data comes as two parts. One is the filter. Remember, above here, we're going to have a portfolio filter that allow you to filter the portfolio item based on the category listed here. So that needs to be mapped as well. So the first row, in here, we're going to type in a portfolio filter, and that's going to be div. On the large size, we're going to have a 12-column area. I want to make sure that one display flex and justify content center. So we have all those things. And then inside it, we're just going to do the mapping of our portfolio filter. So we'll give a list which have an ID of portfolio filters. So over here is going to be all of our list item for that filter, right? So this is our first row. So once we've done that first row, we will have another row down below, which is over here. And in that row, what we want to do is going to be our portfolio container, which contains our portfolio item. Okay, so here we're going to do the data mapping for our JSON data, which is this one. This is our portfolio item, mapped into our item card in our portfolio page. So two part of job on our in this area. And also I will share with you with the filter list data for our portfolio. So in the data folder, I'm just going to leave this one as a static data. If you want to do a dynamic one, you can do it as well. I just want to show you there's a different ways in the React to handle data. It'll either be in a static data stored in your local file, or you're going to fetch it from the third-party API or some RESTful API routes that you build yourself. Okay, and this one will have the static data for that filter list data, and we're just going to import it right above so we can map it down below. So right above, import filter list data. Okay, it allows me. That's good. So we have the filter list data now. Yeah, so far that's all good. And the second thing is that we're going to fetch data from the portfolio API. So to do so, we're going to use a couple hooks. One is our use state hook. The other one is our use effect hook. And over here, we're just going to set up our portfolio local state variable. Portfolio set portfolios equals to, inside the local state, we want to set the initial state of that portfolio to be an empty array, because later on we're going to fetch data from the API and then refill that array with the API data. Okay, and also we want to build another local state variable called data, because in this page we're going to do filter arrangement. We do not want to touch the initial or the original portfolio data. That has to be kept as original. Whenever we filter a portfolio item, we want to make sure that the filtered item are presented on the DOM is stored in a separate data variable, which is this one, data. So that one is set to use state, and then to give the initial state empty array as well. And also we want to set up the local state variable for our filters, and then set filters. So that one's going to be use state. This one does not need to be an empty array because we have it in the static data. I'm only being lazy because it's a static data, so I set it straight away at the beginning. Filter list data, that one there. So these two, so far, are just empty array because we need to fetch it using the fetch function from the backend. And here I'm just going to say const fetch data. Write a function there. It's going to be an arrow function. So we use that fetch function from our mock backend URL, which is this one. Okay, so I put that in over here. This is the place where we can see all of our JSON data, and we want to fetch it there. Once you fetch data, it will return you with a promise, and we have to consume that promise using then response. We want to turn that response, convert that response JSON data into the JavaScript object using this function called res.json. Once we've done that, it's going to return us with another promise, and we have to consume that promise again. Inside that promise, it will be given, there will be a built-in property called data given to us. So we're just gonna use that data. Firstly, we want to console.log that data to see if we can see it. We've done that. And the last bit is if there's any errors with our function, we want to do a catch to solve that problem. And so far, we just console.log e.message. Okay, so we fetch data from this mock backend URL, and we turn it into JavaScript. We convert that JSON format data into JavaScript array that contains the objects, and then we have the data ready. We console.log that data onto our console. How do we trigger this function though? As you can see, so far this function is not going to be used anywhere. The way to trigger it is to use that use effect hook. So down here we say use effect. In between is going to be passing in an arrow function and also comma with empty array. So here we just fetch that data. The use effect hook is used whenever your page first mounted on your DOM. Okay, it's first mounted on your page and first loaded on your DOM. This function will be run, and then whatever inside it will be loaded as well. So this is the best place for us to fetch data because we want our data to be ready when our page is loaded on our DOM. Okay, so we call this function inside the use effect hook at mounting stage, and then the data will be loaded here. So far we constant log, but in the end we should set that data into our data variable. Actually, I'm just going to do this straight away. After the console, we say set portfolio to that data. So now, once the data is ready, we're going to set our local state variable portfolio to that API data. It's the same thing, right? And once you've done this, your local portfolio data will be the same as whatever you see on this mock API page. All right. So now if I go back to the console, let's see. We reload it. I don't need a mobile view. Yeah, I just forgot to save the file. I save the file, go back, reload, go to portfolio. As you can see, these things are there. These are the array, and we have successfully fetched all of those data, and it contains all the items as you can see over here. It has now been console.log of that JSON array. This is actually the JavaScript array, contains the JavaScript objects. All perfect, okay? So now we have done the fetching. Our code is absolutely working, so we do not need this console.log line. Just remove that. We're done that. But below it, what I also want to do is because we have now set our portfolio data into the JSON data, but we haven't touched upon the one that we want to manipulate, which is the data one. So down below, I'm going to write another use effect hook. And inside here, I'm going to set our filter data to the portfolio, which is the one you have just set. And this one will depend on the portfolio data. Whenever the portfolio data changes, this use effect function will be called again, and this data set function will be called again. So the thing inside this injected in this array is your dependent. This use effects depend on whatever variable you put it here to function again. If you put in portfolio data, whenever the portfolio data changes, say for example, there's a one more or one less, this part will be called again. It will execute it again, and then reset your data again. Okay? All these things are automatic in React. You don't have to worry about it. Super fantastic. So now we have our portfolio data there, and actually we could do the mapping already because we have the filter data ready, and we have our portfolio data ready. So down here, why don't we just do the mapping? The mapping of the portfolio data, let's just complete it. It's going to be wrapped in the curly braces as JavaScript. We want to make sure that our data is ready. It's not going to be an empty array. It exists. If that's true, we want to make sure that our data length is greater than 0, because we want to make sure we have some objects in our array. That array is not empty. Initially, we set our data to be an empty array over here. So this step basically tells you we must wait until this step finish, the set data to portfolio data, and double change that empty array to that portfolio array, which is the JSON file over here, right? We have to wait until this part of code got executed before we do the rest. So wait until the JSON.length greater than 0. If that's true, we're going to do the mapping. And the mapping will be like data.map. Here you're going to be very familiar with all this code. For each item in that data, we want to map it into a portfolio item. But so far, let me see if I could just data.map the part of the file, let's say the category. We just want to map that category on our browser. Let's say we put it into a p tag. Oops. And that's going to be item.category. Oops. Forgot to wrap it in curly braces because it's JavaScript. and we make sure that we give a key to our paragraph. It's going to be item._id. So we have that, and we're going back, we reload it, see if it works. Yeah, it works so fine. And then after you're reloading, it fetches data from the backend Monk API, and then we have all the items category listed over there in paragraph. This is how it works, okay? The data fetching is absolutely working, but we do not want to end up with a paragraph. We want to end up with a portfolio item card. So we have to build a card to make it look nice. And inside the component, we're just going to build a thing called a new file. Make sure a new file called portfolio item JSX, and then rfce, we create that boilerplate. So inside here, we know that when we do the mapping over here, the item will be passed in as a property to our child component. So here we're going to consume that property item by doing object destructuring. So once we have that, we can apply it everywhere in here, right? So I'm just going to do it real quick because this is a simple HTML. Copy and paste. So the item get passed in is going to be a 4-column. Item color takes a 4-column on large screen and a 6-column on middle screen. Give a class name of portfolio item, and we're going to do a bit of an image. There's going to be an image inside our JSON file. As you could see, that's the image URL. The image URL is tells you fetch this portfolio image from the assets folder, and underneath there's a portfolio folder, and then that's the image name, right? So to find that, it's actually supposed to be stored in a public folder because the public folder is where the user gets to access from the browser directly. So far here, we do not have that assets folder and portfolio folder. Therefore, what I will do, I will create those things. I'll just put that folder in for you. So now we have that pasted that assets folder. Inside it, we have a portfolio folder, and you will have all of those portfolio images. These are just a random image that I chose to fill up this template. Otherwise, we will have the image as empty. So once we have that, this thing should be working. And then we want to make sure that we have the image title. This title will be the same as on your JSON file, this title, and a brief and a category. The title, the brief, right? I leave a couple of links for you to put on yourself. If you want to show user some other expansion of your project inside the portfolio, you can use this anchor text to redirect a user to other page you want them to see. So this is just for you to decide how you want to use them, but this is your portfolio link, okay? So we set up the template here. And once we have this, what we can do, instead of map it into the paragraph on here, what we can map it into is that portfolio item. So we say portfolio item, close the brackets, check the top has been successfully imported, and then give that key the same key, which is the item._id. And after that, we're going to pass in that item as a property. Okay, so this way, the item has been passed as a property of that portfolio item. You can consume that over here and apply all around here. All right. So supposedly, when you go to the browser, yeah, this one's working. The image has been successfully mapped. All of those buttons have been mapped. Just because I didn't give a name to that JSON file, so there's no name showing. If you give it, it will show. Maybe I'll just do a random example. So in our JSON, I'll say this is going to be title 1, brief, just randomly typing something. Yeah. So have that. Then we reload, go to our portfolio. As you can see, those things get loaded as well as a title and your name, right? And the next thing to do is that we put on the portfolio and portfolio item CSS. So we open that file. I'm just going to copy and paste in all the portfolio and portfolio item CSS in the portfolio CSS file. We want to make sure it has a certain margin to bottom. The filter part, I'll come back to it when we finalize the filter. But inside, as you could see, what contains the portfolio item is the portfolio item, the portfolio wrap. So inside this class is our card element. So you go into the wrap, you will see initially the contexts are hidden. I will make sure we build a pseudo element like a shade cover with a semi-transparent black background. And all the informations initially are hidden. And as soon as we hover on it, down the bottom, we hover on it, this few lines, that thing gets to show, opacity equals to 1. So initially the portfolio information with the opacity of 0. So basically that's invisible inside here. That's the portfolio information. So initially all of your titles, your brief, your portfolio links inside here, this part, are not able to see. They are hidden. Only the portfolio image gets to show to the user. But when you hover on that card, this part will review by this 3 lines of code, controls that, okay? And then we're gonna add a border to the top left and the right bottom as well when the user hover on that card. Going back to see, that's the effects of it. You can see, initially, nothing shows off. As soon as you hover on it, as a shade comes out, which contains all the text elements, and also your portfolio link, and also give you that angle on the corner. Looks really, really cool, right? Yeah. You are allowed to use these 2 links to do something else if you want to. I give that flexibility to you. So we're going back. Let's see, this one's not good. Just gonna change this to primary. Yeah, that looks much better. Alright, all good, all matched up. Cool. So we have our portfolio CSS done. There's a heaps of code. If you want to pause the video and do a bit of typing, I recommend you to do so. Or you can design the way you like. You don't have to, for the CSS part, you don't have to follow exactly what I show here. You can show your creativity and flexibility to put it in the way you want. There's going to be a slight change to each individual person's project once you have finalized it. Otherwise, everyone will have the same portfolio page, right? So I'm just going to show it again here. And that's our subcomponent. Okay, and the last one we haven't done yet on the page is the filter. The filter is supposed to be wrapped here in this UL tag. So let's just do that right now. We have the filter data ready already, and over here, which is our filter list data coming from our static file, remember? So now we're just going to do the mapping. So here we say the filters.map. We're going to map it into a list, filter, arrow function. And for each filter, we want it to be a list that contains the filter's name. Okay, and we're going to assign a key to that list. Yeah, so far that's it. And once we save that, and going back to the browser, you will see that filter is there. It has been perfectly CSSed because we have defined all the settings over here. That setting is for that filter. This. When you hover on it, we make sure the background goes to our theme color. So those 3 parts are for the filter. That's all. And the next step, so far we just have the layout of it. It's not functioning. If you click on any one of those, it's not working. It's not filtering the item you want to the user to see under that category. No. So we have to do a filtering function inside our React code, and we call that handle filter. So here is a constant handle filter data. But I think about how do we filter out all of those data depending on what? If you're going back to the JSON file, we'll see that each one got a category, right? This category, some of them are same category, some of them are not. So we must filter the data based on the item's category. And also if you go to our filter data, we can see the filter data, the name is that category. They matches, right? So we can use the filter's name to match the item's category. If they actually match, we're going to end up filter them out. That's the logic. So we do an arrow function here. Filter data, but we're going to pass in a parameter, which is the category. And inside here, we're just going to set our filter. We do a map, filters.map. And inside here, we're going to say for each filter, we're going to do a function. For each filter, first, we're going to trigger turn on and turn off that active status of each filter button. If I click on all, supposedly the all should be having the background of the cyan. If I click on web, the web background should change to cyan as well. So far, the button is not has not been turned on for that active status. So the first inside this function, the first part will handle that. To do so, we want to make sure that all the filters active status has been set to false. We have applied these skills many times in this project. Inside the navigation, inside the section button, you should be able to comprehend this quite easy right now. And if you go to the filter, you will see there's active status being assigned to each one of those. We use that to handle this, okay? And then we want to make sure that if our filter name triple equals to the category that we're targeting at, and we want to make sure that filter.active being set to true. Okay. This is supposed to be wrapped, just in case. Being set to true. And then we just return that manage your data. Okay. So the logic of the function I explained again. We first of all want to go through each filter item inside the filter array. We want to turn off that active status, set them all to false. And then we're going to do a mapping and matching. If the filter name actually equals to the one that we click on, which is the match with the category, we're going to set that one specifically active to true. And then we return that changed filter. After you've done this, the entire filter will be changed with the one, the active set to true, which is the one you click it. And we want to assign this one to a new variable. And maybe you can call it a new filter equals to that. And then down here, we're just going to set filter to that new filter. Right? This is our typical way of writing code. But instead, you see there's a waste of one line of code. You assign something to a variable and put that variable over here. Why don't I just put this whole thing directly into the set filter function instead of assigning that? So what we can do, instead of the assignment, we cut, do not need this line, put, done. Alright, so that's we can just do the filtering, get a new array of the filter with a new active status, and set that a new array with that set filter function directly, without the assignment. It's just with a line of code. Okay, so once we've done that, we should have that active function working. And before we do so, we can put a new CSS setting for that portfolio filter. Going back to the CSS first, if you look at that portfolio filter, when the list is on filter-active class, the background will be set to our theme color. So we have to turn on this active class for those clicked one and the active one. How do we do that? We do it in the list. We give the class name, and we're going to make this class name a dynamic one by conditional rendering the class name. We'll say, let's just check if that filter.active is true, because we have that active property here, right? And we set it to false, we turn it on. If that one is true, if that's true, we're going to turn on that filter active class for this one. Otherwise, you could say no. So this is the conditionally rendering that filter active class. But going back to the browser, you can see this one changes to cyan straight away. You click on the second one, not working. Let's see. Oh, we haven't added the onClick function yet. To trigger on the click events for each button, we need to add on that onClick to our list. So over here, we say onClick. We're just going to put that in. It's going to be another arrow function with a handle filter data. And over here, we just pass in that category. The category is in our filter data is actually our category name. It's a filter's name. So we just put in filter.name, and that will be our category, right? So once we've done that, going back, we click again, you see that one changes to cyan. The previous one got removed off, all working fine now. All right. So that part is done, and we're going back, and we can see pretty much we have halfway through the filter, except that we haven't been able to filter the item yet. So the last bit inside is handling filter data function. We're able to write few more lines to do the final filtering. First, we're going to do a protection code. We want to check if which category the user click on. If they actually click on all, do we need to do anything? No, because if they click on all, we don't have to do the categorization job. All means present everything. If it's all, we just want to set our data to the original portfolio data. That's the reason why I have two local state variables to hold our data. The portfolio local variable always used to hold the initial data that we fetched from the mock API, okay? And then the data, this one, is to use to hold the filter data, right? So this is the situation where you want to go back to the initial position. And if you lose that portfolio data, you can't go back. You're only left with the filtered status. So if it's all, we set to original and return. Return means escape. Escape from once the line runs into this code, it'll escape from this entire function, handle filter data function. And without going any further, the remaining code will not be read, okay? So that's that. If it's not all the category the user click on, we have to do the filter job, right? So that will be portfolio data using our initial one. We're going to use another JavaScript higher order array function called filter. And inside here, we want to make sure that each item, we want to make sure that we only want to find the item whose category name matches the category name that we have clicked on. So that will be game item dot category triple equals to category. So what it means here is that we're going to go through every single item inside that portfolio and find those category name matches the one you just click on, and only if this condition matches, it will return true, right? It's a boolean. If this is true, and those items will be left out on the DOM, the untrue will disappear. That's how the filter function works. Okay, so once it's done, it will return you with a new array that contains the filtered out item. You want to put that new array into your local status by saying set data equals to that. One day you get used to writing code like this, and you do not feel that this is challenging to understand, your JavaScript skill has already been upgraded to a super higher level. I guarantee you that. If you're still looking at this code feel challenging and unable to comprehend or somehow understand but not 100%, what you can do is that you take this line out and then you write it here, because after the filter function, what you can have is a new variable, it's a new array called filter, and then you put that new variable over here. It takes 2 steps, because inside here, it already consumed too many energies inside your brain. So adding on one more challenge to do the chain function will be a second challenge that will probably cost you lose it. But you need to accept that challenge and get used to it, because this is the professional way of writing code. Okay? We have to chain things together. We have to nest all the functions together. And yeah, once we've done that, we should have all the categories that matches this condition to be filtered out and left down the DOM. The remaining one disappears straight away. Let's see if that one works. Look at that. It works perfectly fine. So this is how you use React.js to do a filter without relying on any third-party libraries. There are heaps of third-party libraries can do this filtering job, but when it comes to React project, I do not want to use those. The reason is because so far we only have 9 portfolio items demonstrated on this page. What if you have 900? And you have heaps of data to be loaded, right? You don't want to load your 900 items on a single page and then making the user keep scrolling on this page forever and ever. And in that situation, what we're supposed to do? If you do have 900 portfolio items, to be presented. There's another thing called pagination. We need to add a pagination down here. So each page will only show 9 items. Once it's finished, we'll leave the user to click on it and move on to the next page, right? I will cover how to build a professional pagination in my future video, but in this video, for demonstration purpose and for the beginner course reason, I'm not going to show how to build a pagination inside here, but because that's going to be very complicated function inside. But this is the experience I share with you. If you rely on the third party, and it would not, sometimes they don't give you that pagination function, and you have to load all of your items on a single page. Well, for simple project, it doesn't really matter. If you only have few projects on hand, you wouldn't be able to touch that pagination area. Anyway, but if you have been in this industry for a long time, you have over 100 projects, building it directly with React is the way to go, because it doesn't matter how many you have, React is able to handle it. All right? Cool, guys. We have nearly finished this project portfolio part. I would say that all finished. I don't see anything got left here. All done. This part is done. This part is done. You can put in your own project link. Let's say this part is done. And all good to me. So we're only left with the last part of the project, which is the context, which I'm going to do right now. This one. So for that, let's move on to the page part and find our contact and open up the contact and the contact.css, because we're going to use both of them. Again, instead of writing that random title, we have our formal way, the section title predefined component. We can just import that, but we need to wrap everything in a container first, and then we import that section title, close the brackets, give the title of contact, and then we have a subtitle. I want to make sure that's contact me. Just a slight difference. So as soon as we've done that, going back, move on to contact, we have the title already. Okay, so now you can see that we nearly finished with all this cool animation going on through these blurry pages. Really awesome, cool, right? Take a good photo of yourself. Find a Photoshop to take the photo. Do not do it yourself, and that'll make your portfolio really stand out. And down below here, what we're gonna do, we're gonna create a row and wrap everything. So in this part, it's not going to be a super complicated stuff. So what I will do, I will just copy and paste a few lines of code and explain them to you. But before that, I'm just gonna write a row. Give the margin to top equals to 2. That's one row. So inside this row, first thing I want to show you is the contact information. You must give the user your personal address or your contact address and your contact details. And then the second part, which you probably want to show, underneath this column 6, is your social icon. Here I did not create a separate component for it. I just put in as a hard coding, which is the non-professional way of doing things in React. But I leave this to you as a practice. You are supposed to wrap these social link items into another separate component, and then you map that into here, right? Like how we practiced before. And so we have this first column, your personal information. The second 6th column, that one there, is going to be your social icon. And then down below, what we can have is this one, your email. And the last but not least, what you can have is this one, which is your contact number. So once you have all of those done, yeah, you're nearly finished. So these are all wrapped in this single row over here, right? You have the first 6th column, second 6th column, third 6th column, the last 6th column, each responsible for a different job. And going back to the browser, you will see that's how it's randomly looking like, without putting on the CSS effect. And the next step is to control that contact.css. So what we can do here, I put this one in. We give a styling to the info box, make sure it has a proper padding. Here I use a different type of icon, as you can notice. It's a BX bx dash. If you see this, going back to the app.js, above, we have another icon that has been imported but never used, which is the box icon. This is what it is for. bx is for the box icon. It looks slightly different from the Bootstrap one and the Remix one, but still nice. So in this project, I have demonstrated 3 types of icons for you to use, even though there are a heap of them out there, but I just show you how to apply them in the React.js way. Okay, so we have this part done. In the context, we have to control that bx icon, make sure it's colored right. We have to control that h3 title, give a slightly larger font size, and also control the paragraph, the social link, the anchor tag, the hover effects, all of those. So once you have that, and then you're going back, it looks all proper and decent present to you, especially this shining cyan color with this light gray that matches perfectly. So this one has a hover effect as well. If you put your mouse on it, you can put your social media link underneath the anchor tag. Okay, so we have our contact first part done, which is this one, the entire row of it. What comes after is the contact form, the message form. That's the focus of this part, and I want to spend more time on it. So here we just leave it, this part. Underneath this row, we should have a contact form. And we know that the contact form is going to be a separate component, so we just create one for now. And inside your component folder, create a new file called contact form JSX RFCE, create a boilerplate. And as soon as after that, you just create a new file called contact form.css. And once you have that, link those two together, import contact form.css. So you have that one in, and underneath here, we're just going to import our contact form. Yes, there. So that one's in. Be successfully imported. Back to the browser. It's there. Okay. So now we have our components set up already. We're just going to build our form. The reason why I want to spend more time on this is because the form contains the information as input. In React.js, there's a certain way to deal with the text input, and how we're going to handle it. Let me show you. So we're going to the contact form page, and in this component, instead of rendering that, we're just going to use the brackets. So inside here, we're going to put in the form, and then the action. In React, we do not use that action post way to submit data. Later on, I will show you how to do a proper submission of the form data. But inside here, we'll say that we'll build a row. And inside that row, we'll say we're going to have a div, column mid 6. So I'm going to take a half. And we'll give a form group. So as soon as you add on this class name, the thing inside here will be wrapped together as a form group. This is a Bootstrap thing to make it easier to handle the form layout. So in here, we're going to put in our input text. We're going to give it a name. So this will be a full name. So we want the user to pass in their full name. And we'll give a name, we'll give a class name of form control. So once you add that, this thing will be part of the form that will be controlled by the form group. So we'll give an ID of name as well. And the placeholder, you name, save. So we have that done. And this is a 6 column in one row. So we're going to do another 6 column in that row. So just copy and paste. But for this one, we're just going to add a margin, MT3, margin to bottom 3. And the type, we're going to change it to email. And also the name, we're going to change it to email as well. ID is an email. And placeholder is your email. So as soon as you have that, and go back to the browser, you'll see those things we have just done has been put over there. So contact form. And for this one, we say empty dash md equals to 0. So on the middle side, we want to make sure that margin to top is 0. So that one close off. And that's that. So we have two parts. One is to take the user's name. The other one is the user email. And we also want to have another form group where we can get the user's subjects. Therefore, outside this row, we're going to have a new form group. So I just copy this one because that's going to be another text input. This one going to take the whole row anyway, so just going to be a margin to top 3. Without that, we need a margin to top to separate out this in text. And this one going to be a type of text, and the name of it we just put in subject. ID going to be subject, and here we're just going to type in subject. Yep, so that one is done as well. And the last one we want to put in is a form group. And this one is not going to take half of the column, half of the screen. It's going to be taking the whole width. And the last one, we're going to do the same. div, just going to be a form group. And then we also give a margin to top of 3. But inside here, what we're going to have is a text area. So this is not going to be a input text box. We give a name of message, ID, we give an ID of message, and there's only 1 column, but row, we want to have 6 rows in that text area. I give a class name of form control. Yep, and then we probably want to have a placeholder message. Yep, that's all done. So go back to the browser, you can see we have that form ready. It just as it looks not as we expected. So what I'm going to do, in the contact form CSS, I'm going to put in all this form CSS. We want to make sure that contact form have a padding. So every element inside it gets shrinks a bit, and have a background of that semi-transparent white. And also we want to make sure the input and the text area has a border radius of 0, box shadow of none. And when they're on focus, we want to make sure the background color changes to that one. So it's slightly darker than the original background. We want to set the placeholder color to that white, sort of like a gray-white color. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I give a certain padding to the input and also the text area. That's it. So we're going back to the main seed. Did I include that form.css? Yeah. I just forgot to give the form a name, because in the contact form, we're going to use the contact form class name. So I have to set this one to that, otherwise you wouldn't be able to identify that DOM element. So this is going to be contact form. Yep. And also let's add a margin to the top as well, because currently it's sitting very close to the previous element. So once that's done, we have that form ready. Going back, you can see that one looks all nice and decent, right? Pretty decent, all good. And we're missing a button down below here. So inside the form, after that last element, what we're going to do here is that we add another div called the text center. This is a bootstrap thing that will allow you to align your item in the middle. And then we give a button. The type is going to be submit. And inside here, we're just going to say send message. Yep, all done. So because in the CSS, we have set up the rules for that submit button, which is here. We give the margin to top, we give a background color about theme color, and even including its hover effects, we have set it up as well. So when we go back, you can see that button is there, all perfect, right? So the layout and the CSS for the form has been set up by me. The next job is to handle the submit events and input text events. So whenever the user key in stuff, so far you can see I can key in stuff, but this is not the React way of doing things. This is like the vanilla HTML way of typing things, because the input text box will naturally allow you to type in things, but we are unable to collect the user's input over here. And how do we do that? So going back to our component, the React way of collecting user's input is to use the user state hook. So here in the React, we have, say, user state. We use that hook to take user's information. And inside here, we're going to build a variable. Initially, when the user did not input anything, the initial state of all the in-text and text area, input box area, should have an initial state. So we just say that initial state that one equals to, I'm gonna set an object for that one. So have a look at how many things we have. We have the name of full name, we have the name of email, we have the subjects, we have the message, and that's all. Yeah. Be careful. Whatever you set over here must be the same as what you type for the name. If your name is a full name, then your JavaScript objects that the property name should be full name as well. Initially, we set it to an empty string because we got nothing input. And the second one gonna be email. So that one gonna be initially empty string, and the next one gonna be subject, empty string as well. The one after it gonna be message. Later on, I will show you why this property name must match the input property name for that one. There's a very smart trick in this that'll make your code a lot easier to collect the input text. And then we're gonna set another one, result, because we need this one to show if the user has submitted the message successfully. And then down here, we're just gonna create a local state called text because we're handling text input. And we say set text. That one equals to use state. Here we're gonna put in the initial state, which is the initial state variable, the one that we set up here, which is an object. And then later on, when we start typing in the input box, this local state text will be reset by this function. So the text, local state text variable will change accordingly. Okay, so the way to do so, we're gonna do a function called change text. And that one's gonna be an arrow function. So here we're gonna take in a built-in variable called events. E stands for events. And that one, what we're gonna do here is that I'm gonna show you a test. Whenever we type in stuff, let's say console.log e.target. So let me just show you, whenever you type in stuff, what's gonna happen to this one, okay? So say for example, in the first input box, I'm gonna add a function here named onChange. Instead of writing onClick, because there's no click events, here is a text change event. So we say onChange. That one's going to be a function. So we call that change text function over here. Whenever we type in stuff, we change the text, right? But that text comes with, that events come with this events built-in property. It's a parameter which has been given by JavaScript. You can use it directly. And then we access the e.target. I want you to see what's going on there. All right, and then here we're gonna have this full name. Let's see if this one's working on the browser. So going back to the browser, and the first one, which is the one we just set up, I just type in your. So as soon as I start to type in, this one starts to log. Let's see what it has logged. The e.target that I wanted to log here is actually the entire input. So now you know this events target is the one we're actually changing text at, which is this entire input element, right? You can see for that input element, what property we have. We have the type, we have the name, and we have the ID, okay? So if we say e.target.name, we change that console.log, let's see what else we can get. I delete this. The console.log shows full name. So e.target.name will show directly the property value for the property name. So this is the property name, the value is the full name. So e.target.name will get you access to that property value, full name. And I intentionally set our property to that full name, which matches this one. So basically means that we can use this name to link our value to our property. Let me show you how. So over here, instead of doing this one, e.target.name, we know that in this input function, we can add all this new property here. Say for example, in addition to name, we can also say value. But so far, we haven't done anything for the value yet. I'm just gonna say the value is supposed to equal to, at the end, after all the changes in the function, the value should be the full name value, which is the value of the objects. And then in here, I just say full name. All right. Let's say text dot full name. because eventually this initial state will be passed into the text. Once we did a change, the text will be this object. We can access that fullName property using text.fullName. This is how you handle JavaScript, access different properties inside JavaScript objects, right? So we have that done. And here, we can do another object destructuring to access the name and value property of the input by saying const object destructuring name value equals to e.target. So now we can access both name and value from this input text, okay? And let's see console.log of both things, what we can get. We're just going to console.log name and value to see if it can give us something. I reckon it wouldn't work. Yeah, it works. It's not showing here, but it's showing here. It tells us that we have the full name. Whatever letter I type in is showing. I type in. The one underneath is exactly the letter I type, but it is not showing in the input text box. It's showing in the console, right? So basically means that this object destructuring is working. I can get the value now. So the next step is to reset our states using this setText function to link that text objects to that full name. How do we do that? We say setText brackets. This is how we're going to change the state of our state variable. First, we're going to do a spread operator, text. What this part did is that we're going to copy the existing content inside our current text objects, comma, and then, because we are not sure which one the user is actually changing, the user could actually type in their name or email or subjects or message. We could use another JavaScript object syntax which wrapped property name with that square brackets and put in name equals to value. So what this part does? What this part does is that we're going to copy the existing text object and we're going to find the current name, whatever the name is. If the user is changing the full name, this one will be full name, and we're going to make the full name equals to the current value. If the user is actually typing the email, then this name will be email, email : equals to that email value. Okay? So this is the JavaScript, sort of like an advanced feature for the objects. Once we have that, the last step we're going to do, we're going to set result equals to an empty string. I'll come back to that later. Oops, I put the result outside the objects, not here, over here. So in this one, we reset the object's data and value. We copy the initial one, we set the new one because either this one or the email one or the message one or the subjects one, either one of the four will be changed by the user when they start to input text. And that one gets updated by using this approach. We fetch the name of that property and we fetch the value of that property. Because the name of the property matches our property value here, so we can use that as a match. And then we update our current text objects and we reset our text. In that way, our initial state will change accordingly. All of these things will be changed. Once we've done that, let's see if we could console.log text. Yep, so we've done that. Going back to the browser, see, when I type in now, it starts to working. So this one as well, when I start to type, this one is working. This one as well, this one as well. It's all working fine now. See, previously it's not working, but now the value has been linked. The value has been linked to our state variable, and our state variable will reset the value. This is called, in React world, two-way binding. We bind the input text to our React state variable, and then we use the React state variable to change the text. It's like you're working on a two direction. And that's the professional way of handling text message. And on the console, let's just see. Yeah, that one is working. It's still showing that text message. And as you can see, as I type in one more letter over here, let's just say A, clear that off. This one, A, and that one shows a S. So you see, this one gets updated every time I type in that word. So that full name will changes according to whatever I type in here. This is the two-way binding, how it works. Whatever you type in here will be passed into your local variable, and your local variable will be linked back to the value of your input text box. Amazing, right? Okay, we have that part done. And if this thing's working, we can apply this approach, this change text function, to all of the remaining input text box. Let's just do that, very simple way. So we're going to copy, actually I'm going to make this two lines together, so make it easier for us to copy and paste. This one we need a value and unchanged function, this one the same, and also the text area one the same. We're just going to keep that, all done. So now, if you go back and type stuff, I'm just going to reload and go back to the contact. Oh, everything is, it looks like everything is working all together. Must be some bugs in it. Let me see what's going wrong. Oh yeah, the access property. Because we're giving the full name to everyone. So this one, we do not want the full name property, we want the email one. So we just change that to email. And this one, we want the subject one. So we give that to subject. And this one, we want the message one. We give that to message. As soon as we've done that, and just reload, it should be working all fine now. See? It's working all good. Perfect. So this is how we do the two-way binding to link our input text message, the variable change, to our local state variable, and then after the change, we pass back that local state variable value back to our input text. And this is the React way of handling text. Instead of using traditionally, say for example, you have this message box, you're going to write some PHP code, or you're going to use some other backend code to create a post request and send that text message. But in React, we do not handle it that way, we handle it this way, okay? And after we have done the text change, the next step is to handle that submit function. Because when the user actually clicks the submit button inside this form, it should trigger that submit function. Here we have said that this button type is submit, so whenever the user click on it, it will trigger a submit event for that form. But we have not got a place to write that submit event. So above here, at the form, we say onSubmit. That one equals to, we're going to have to create another function called handle submit message. That one going to take in the built-in parameter e as well, and it's also going to be an arrow function. So so far we're just going to console.log. Before that, we say e.prevent default. e.prevent default, and we're just going to console.log submit. And then here, we're just going to call that function whenever you want to submit that form. Okay, console.log submit. And let's just try it out to see if this one's working. Going back to our browser, reload, go to the contact page, and then open up the console. Just type in a few things. Submit, or this one is an email. I'll just give an example.com. Submit. As you can see on the console, this one's working submit events. Actually, console log that submit works. So all good. The next thing to do is to do a very simple form validation. There are more advanced way to do this kind of form validation, but in this tutorial, I'm just going to show you a basic approach to it. We use an if function because we do not want the user to submit an empty text message with nothing in it. So what we must make sure that the user has filled in the information as required. So to do so, we write an if function by saying if text.fullname triple equals to empty string, or text.email equal to empty string, or text.message equal to empty string. If either one of these three equals to empty string, so what we're going to do, we're going to set an error message to the user by saying set text. Inside here, we're going to reset our initial state object variable. First, we're going to copy the existing text variable text. Copy that by using spread operator. And then in the result variable, result is the error message or the result message we want to deliver to the user. We say incomplete. Okay. And once I have that, we have the result error message status incomplete. So down here at the bottom, what we can do, above the button and the second last item, we add in a new element here, which is about that result. Text result triple equal to, if we have found the text result equals to incomplete, and if that's true, what we're going to do is that we're going to show user a error message. So that error message, we're going to create a div. Because it's incomplete information, we're just passing that error message saying that please fill in all above details. That's all. Okay. Make sure it's spelled correctly and double check this word match. All good. So what this function does is that if the user missed either of one of the three cells, we're not going to submit that message. Okay. And we're going to pop up this incomplete error message to let the user to fix that error. Okay. And the CSS for the error message has been predefined over here. Let me show you the last bit. On the error message, we're going to give a background of the orange because it's a kind of alerting. And then we set a text font and text color for it to stand out. Let's test out if our validation actually working on the browser. So going back to the browser, we're going to reload the page and contact. And we're going to say submit. If nothing gets filled out, basically it's empty. These are all empty. And the error message pops out straight away saying that please fill in all about details. And you look at when I start to key in the first letter, that thing disappeared. The error message disappeared. How did I handle that? Back to our code editor, you can see when I start to key in the first letter, we will trigger this change text function. Whenever you trigger this change text function, this is where I say I will come back. The result property value will be reset to empty string. Okay? Previously, when the error message pops up, the result has been set to incomplete. But whenever you start to key in stuff into the input box, the result will be reset to empty string again. So that's how we make that incomplete disappear. Once the status disappears, the error message will not appear again. Okay? So this is the logic behind it. So I type in that one, I'm missing the message, it's still not working. Only you type in all the required messages, this will allow you to go ahead. Okay? And the last bit I want to say here, instead of console.log.submit, we can console.log the text, which is the entire text state variable. We can log it on the console. In the real world, here's the part you're going to make a post request to deliver all of those data in that state variable or the text variable. You're going to post this object's data to some email API. But so far, we are not using any email API. If you have one, you can use your own to make that post request, and your message will be posted that email. Okay, it will handle that. But so far, we just console.log that text message. Let's give a try of the complete filled out. Let's just say give that random name. This one will be at example.com. This one will be that. This one will be that. Open up to the console, submit. And you can see console.log, it contains the entire text objects with all the property in it. It has its email, full name, message, and result is empty, that's okay, subjects. And this one, if you have an email API, you can make the post request to send out this message. But so far, let's just leave it on the console. All right? Okay, cool. Now we have pretty much finalized all the building of this project. So in this project, we have built a very dynamic section switch function, and also the majority of the data on the web browser are also animated and dynamic. And also I have demonstrated how to use fetch API from the mock API router, how to do a form, a text change, how to fetch data from your local data files, how to map data on your DOMs, and how do we create a component and set the properties for component, how to use different sort of hooks like the use state hook and the use effect hook. And that's pretty much what you can get from this video. And the last tip I want to give you is that I want to give you a tip how to deploy these things, because this is pretty much like a static website without any backend. And for your personal portfolio website, I think this is okay for you to display as a static website. Even though you want to change it, it wouldn't be a huge amount of job. But to deploy this static website, if you're using a shared host server with a cPanel, I'm talking about cPanel, what you can do here is that going back to your code editor, close off these few things, Control backtick open up this terminal, and Control C to stop it and clear it. So now you're back to the root folder. You can type in npm run build to build your application. Type enter. This is gonna take depending on how fast your computer is. My one is pretty good, so I already done the building. So you can build it. Once you build it, you will have a build folder in your directory. What you can do is that you can compress this one into a zip file and upload it into your cPanel share hosting folder. You know, in your cPanel share hosting folder, there's going to be a public folder which shows www that allows the public people to see any files inside it. You can upload this folder, the zip file, into your share hosting folder, and then you extract that file in that folder. And that's it. Once you extract the file, the index.html files will be in it, and the user goes to that URL or that domain name, will be able to see your file straight away. That's the tips for easy deployment of the static website. In the future video, I will show you how to use GitHub or Git to deploy your application to a more advanced server if you're not using shared hosting. But so far, for static website, this is good enough to deploy in a shared hosting. At least you have a server to demonstrate your project. Alright guys, that's pretty much what we wrapped up so far today. If you do like my video and you learned something from my video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Otherwise, I'll be seeing you in the next video. Thank you. Bye for now.